Hello, hello. Oh, camera's gonna turn on. Weird. Weird that when I switch scenes on OBS, my YouTube video blurted up for a second. Oy. You take a nap, then your hair goes crazy. New microphone position. I don't know if the arm is long enough though. We'll see. Hello. It feels far away. If I lean back mostly. Hey, how's everybody doing? Hopefully everybody's good. Hey, it's still loud as fuck, isn't it? Okay, that's better. W. Let's see. Trying to think if anything weird happened yesterday. Any stuff we did yesterday after the stream. I don't think there was anything interesting or important, which means I failed at my own mission, where I tell everyone to sign off and say, hey, get something checked off your to-do list. And I don't think I did anything on my to-do list. Not that I had a long to-do list specifically, but there's always something you can do, you know? Oh, you know what? I did do something. Hold on. I'm not a loser. I did a very small workout. That's right. Healthiest guy around. I guess it kind of works with the title where I say big stream, bigger guy, because I'm a big guy. I did some deadlifts and I did some like dumbbell. Dumbbells are the ones that are in each hand, and then the barbell's the long one. So I did some deadlifts with the barbell, and then some like just chest presses with dumbbells. Have like a bench press, like, you know, it's like a bed with racks with arms on it. It's like a little T-bar thing. I guess it's just called a bench press, like bench is what you would call it. I have that kind of bench, like with a standard bar and some standard weights, and then I also have just like a bench that can like be converted into like a leaning back position thing, but otherwise it's just a flat bench. That's like the only home gym items I really have beyond like the little barbells and dumbbells. It should have been a longer workout with like a full you know, squats as well and some like lumbar exercises, but I was like, you know, I'm gonna start slow. Also, I have my first canvas in a long time coming up on this Saturday, and I was thinking like, man, if I fuck up my butt and my legs and I'm like sore as balls, because sometimes when I first work out after a long time of not working out, oh man, do I feel it for like 2 weeks sometimes, you know what I mean? Oh, you watched The Dark Knight Returns, the one with I call him Fat Batman just because he's kind of thick. I got fucked reading that one. What's bad about that one? Alex Ross was the guy that wrote it, or maybe that sounds vaguely familiar as a name because I used to work with a guy named Ross, so that's kind of where that would stick in. Gary Kelly Robin, but that means like me getting fucked. That's bad, right? So that means it's not. I got robbed, or it could have been better, or something. I assume the movie was pretty much the same thing. Maybe the animation's weird. I don't know. I mean, when you read it in a comic, you imply a lot of the between frames. You know what I mean? I mean, because when I read it, I assumed because it was making fun of like Reagan and shit that it was but maybe it was just liberal or whatever. I don't really remember the politics of it at all. It was just like it was constantly cutting over to the TV where Reagan's there, drawn all silly like, and he's doing shit, and everyone's like, "This kind of sucks" or whatever. I don't know. There's some kind of vibe that he's doing things bad or not good. Interesting. Actually, let me see. It is called. I can just hide my eyes. The Dark Knight Returns. Oh no, that's what you said too. Frank Miller. Not even what I was thinking. Where's old Reagan boy mixed in here? Because maybe the frame that represents it. And you can see if it is or is not in the thing. Flip, flip, flip. Yeah, there's like a Nazi lady with giant boobs. Pretty sure that's supposed to be Reagan there. Also, the double swastika Nazi lady, also with their cheeks, has double swastikas on it. I thought Reagan looked different in my memory. Just flipping through real fast to see if I can find a frame that represents that element. It's also memory. Yeah, like there's... I kind of forgot about the lady with the big orange hair. She's in this, like a newscaster, I guess, and... All kinds of weird shit. Oh yeah, and Green Arrow's in it, and he's got like a missing arm. And he's still, I assume, super, whatever. He's still like super, I don't know, progressive. I don't know. I don't know. That's a shame. Was there the weird dude with the spiky teeth, the big bald crazy dude with those little tiny eyeballs? He seems like a pretty big villain in this as well. There's this like, I don't know, fight scene with a bunch of like weird gray mud. He's got like it's hard, not very good. I guess maybe not the best scene, but yeah, he's in it. Okay. So it's still probably the same story then, with maybe slight parts cut out for time or whatever. Because all of the animated movies and shit are always like 100 minutes. You know what I mean? Or like 90 minutes, an hour and a half at most. Or sometimes like 70 minutes, you know? It seems. Oh, right, I put that there. Okay. Bleh. Therapy is treated as bad and dumb. Punching them in the head. That's pretty stupid. I mean, it's a Batman thing. I feel like Batman's always gonna have villains are evil. Rehabilitation is repunchification. You know what I mean? Like it's all. It's Batman. You know what I mean? Huh. Interesting. I think I'll be down for one that's a bit more, you know, less just constantly like I am the knight and then criminals will pay. And it's like, okay, buddy, we get it. You know, we get it. You had a bad crime experience and now you want to take it out on every human that exists. Let me take a look at my playlists here. Ooh, okay. I'll go in there, add that to my thing real fast. Halloween // That might be a fun Halloween watch or something. Let's see. Okay. This. Oh, well, sure, whatever. I don't know if you saw it. I should link it in chat. I should put it in my own Discord too. What am I doing? I finished a video edit for Cinemarxism channel. It's about rapid response. I was pretty happy with the edit. There's still one tiny little mistake that I made, but the export takes like 5 hours, and I was like, it's fine. At like 24-minute mark, one of my effects cuts off some letters. A bona fide mystery. Oh, very cool. Oh, I watched I randomly watched that steampunk one where he's like, a Batman by gaslight or whatever. That one seemed like a mystery, but I'm also bad at like media literacy and shit. But I thought it was pretty all right. You know, it's a whatever. You know, it wasn't like the best thing I've ever seen or whatever. It's just like a, I don't know, like just a fun little thought experiment of him living in the Victorian era, right? Gotham by Gaslight's what it's called, yeah. Good call. You're right. Oh yeah, I forgot we're gonna watch that too. I mean, you probably have an easiest way to get it. Yeah, like, so instead of, like, a Joker or whatever, that's, like, the villain specifically. You'll probably have some parts of it. Yeah, it's not, like, I mean, I don't want to be, like, a spoiler or whatever, but it's not, like, the Joker. I'll link, just because it might be illegal or something to, like, put it inside of my chat. Here's a link to that's Batman Gaslight thing. Let's see. Oh, I didn't do enough. I thought it was auto-completing, but it wasn't. I just threw it in the general chat. You may not even have... Oh, you probably have Discord. But... I mean, again, you can probably just search it for yourself if you don't feel like it. Also, just a great website in general. Okay, gotcha. Let's just hit it off. Let's hit it off. Let's start it off strong. Oh yeah. The other day we watched a shit ton of Andor. We watched the first season. Banger. It was a banger. True. I honestly thought there would have been more of the full revolution in season 1, but that just makes me pumped for season 2. A bunch of really, really good speeches in the last 3 episodes. Yeah. Kind of crazy that Andor had, like, I mean, it makes sense to have an arc where he's just some guy and he doesn't really want to be a revolutionary or whatever. And he's just trying to go about his own business. And even though he, like, works with them for a bit, it's like, I'm still just here for my own business. It's fine. I'm not trying to, you know, yuck anybody's yum. I mean, yeah, when he's like, I'm just a tourist. What the fuck are you talking about? What is happening? Right? That kind of shit. It is. Yeah. But I just, because even like, being told and like, having the little red book guy and all these other things happening, that wasn't what did it for him. It was always, it took, and even parts of his past that they alluded to, and they never really fully showed it, but they talked about it. Should have also, could have also been enough. But I thought it was just, it was a good arc to show that it just takes a little bit longer for some people to come around to be like, also like, it's not like he's just door knocking for the DSA. Like it's like full in, you know what I mean? Like that's a different commitment level. So I'm acting like, wow, he's not as base as I am, but that's not. But it seemed realistic that it would take a while to push somebody that far. And there was a bunch of twists and turns in there too that I didn't really expect. Really cool. Whoa, dude, you gotta let me give it to me slow, you know what I mean? You can't spoil it, Fair, okay. Plausible deniability. Now when it happens, I'll be like hype, or not. Okay, let's pause the musies. Let's grab the thing. Okay, put this there. Grab this. Put this here. I have to use this window because the thing is stupid. I wish I could pin things using non-built-in chat, but Twitch is weird. All right. I've had this, even other Tug videos have talked about this thing, and I don't know enough about the Cold War. I think I'll eventually do a deeper, full-on look at a lot of the different USSR things as a way of both being interested and also teaching myself new stuff. But I'm curious. This is like the layman's. This is the Joe Everyman's idea. It might. I mean, I hope it's not super anti-USSR, but we'll see. We'll see.
Ugly mother big. Your mother is a glorious. I can't say those things on this website, but if you head over to Extra Tug, we've been on this one.
Extra Tug
for its exclusive glory. All right, we're gonna do it. We're gonna talk about it. I've been ignoring it for a very long time, and it keeps coming up, and I feel like I have to mention it, so I'm gonna go really hard on this one. So the cool thing about this channel is I don't have a theme or consistent content. Like I can talk about whatever I want. I talked about little cute animals, then I talked about how The Simpsons predicted the end of the world. Like it doesn't matter what I do, you people will watch it. Well, within reason. I appreciate. It's not me saying like I'm a god. Like I appreciate you guys turning up, but you guys don't care what I do. But somehow, no matter what I talk about, it always seems like the Cold War keeps popping up. It's like that one friend that's a friend.
Huh, interesting. It always seems to be really seems to be very, very pivotal in the world in ways that don't seem obvious at first. Huh.
Of your friend, but every time you throw a house party, that dude shows up even though you didn't really invite him, and he totally kind of sucks. And at first it was annoying, and then it became scary because I felt like I was being cursed by Stalin. But the more it came up, the more I realized it was extremely important to our understanding of, like, the world right now. And that got me thinking, maybe I need to tear down the Berlin Wall that surrounds my heart. Every time it came up, I'd be a little bit pissed, but no longer. I'm gonna appreciate what the Cold War is and what it did. Not all the killing, not all the death, but besides that,
I mean, I'm kind of like that, right?
So I'm gonna make a whole video dedicated to this, but the problem is,
but by that I mean the watch me, my followers, or else,
It's really big and long, and there's technically like no real beginning or end of this thing. So this video is gonna be long, and don't be pissed at me because you guys in the comment section said.
I would say the beginning and end of it for me, if I had to, I would normally assume there would be. You could say there were, and that would be end of World War II, including Japan, and then that's the beginning. Sorry, and then the end would be the fall of the USSR specifically, not just the Berlin Wall, but the fall of the USSR.
Make long.
But maybe that it's maybe that event didn't happen in one big thing. It may have happened slowly. I'm not really sure. So
your videos. I want to fall asleep to your videos, and that one hurt my feelings. But two, it's good to get for the views for the YouTube. So whatever.
But first, let's do an ad!
Personally, I find it offensive that TV shows told me that my skin would stop getting acne after pubescence. To this day, I get such bad breakouts on my
I wouldn't assume he gets bad breakouts, but like I used to get acne really bad. But also, I didn't shower that much. Teenage guy, gamer guy, gross as hell. Yes, pretty gross. I just didn't like showering. It was a long, boring, and uncomfortable feeling. I would be in the shower. It's got nice warmth to it, but then it's got cold water at one part. Or it feels a little chilly when you're, getting in, and then it's chilly when you're getting out, and you got to dry off, and then your skin feels all dry. Yeah, unethical.
I failed chemical ask men grooming. I was sent a blemish. A lot of people go right over there. Breakouts.
But like getting one or two zits is not.
I'm a lizard.
Fuck, get one or two zits is not breaking out, right? One or two zits is just having a zit. That's not the same thing.
I need constant moisturization or I will die. These are safe skincare alternatives to benzoyl I am a list. It spells y'all lineup, and it's all dermis. Cold War. And I'm not going to be talking about the boring history because you can just go watch Ken Burns or something. I'm not that. The Cold War is full of drama, and it's full of will they, won't they's, and it's all about proxy wars, nuclear bombs, sex, espionage, and two-headed dogs. So let's just I'm getting right into it.
That's not the two-headed dog I've seen. I thought the one I've seen was the two German Shepherds, and they're like, oh, no, that was the beheaded dog, where it's like a dog when they just kind of cinched its neck and have a bunch of tubes and shit, and they like put a cold Q-tip on its tongue or on its nose, and it's like licking its tongue, kind of all janky like. And I was like, okay, I can live as a head in a jar as long as I, yeah.
So most of us know the broad strokes of the Cold War, even if it's just from movies like, I don't know, Rocky IV and Miracle. Oh my god, how good is the movie Miracle? Opportunities, boys. I quote that all the time when I'm playing Rocket League, and no one knows what I'm talking about. Even if the Russians make Cold War sports movies like Going Vertical, a film about the USSR's gold medal winning 1972 Olympic basketball team, it does seem odd that there are so many movies about sports and the Cold War. Like, that crossover seems to be happening a lot for some reason. But it turns out that's actually because of a concept called sports diplomacy. Sports diplomacy is the idea that sports can influence politics or the perception of political power. And this concept is practically tailor-made for the Cold War because this was a conflict that saw no direct fighting. In its essence, the Cold War was practically a dick measuring / pissing contest between the Soviet Union and the United States. The lore stretches all the way back to World War II, where the US and the Soviet Union were kind of like enemies, but also friends. They were frenemies. The Soviets started off World War II by colluding with the Germans, taking advantage of Nazi forces destabilizing Europe in order to occupy and...
Hold on, what? Oh.
War II by colluding with the Germans, taking advantage of
Wait, starting off World War II, okay, the Non-Aggression Pact?
Nazi forces destabilizing Europe in order to occupy and annex territories that would eventually make up the USSR. But then Hitler hit him with the old, actually, you know what, dude, switcheroo. I'm sorry, I f***ed up. I'm gonna attack you now. I'm gonna invade you, because that seems like the move. And the Soviets were like, okay, Britain, you chill? We gonna be chill? And Britain was like, I don't know, dude. Yeah, sure. If you're gonna fight against the Germans, whatever. You got a lot of people. And because the...
I'm not sure which country this. Yeah.
Started off World War II by colluding with the Germans, taking advantage of Nazi forces destabilizing Europe.
Soviet role in World War II: Realities and Myths by Mark Kramer. Analysis in 2020. Mark Kramer, the Davis Center for Russian and Eurasian Studies. The director of the Cold War Studies Project at the Davis Center. The Journal of Cold War Studies. Who owns the huh? Oh, this is like a literal like land. Cold War. What? It doesn't own the Cold War? No. AI is so dumb. Peer-reviewed academic journal on the history of Cold War II, MIT Press, and Harvard Project on the Cold War studies. Publisher, MIT Press. Huh. Hmm. Hmm. Well, with this here, Soviet Germany signed a pact that created a partnership between, them in dividing up Poland and the rest of Eastern Europe.
In order to occupy and annex territories that would eventually make up the USSR.
So, this is Germany, right? Because that's France, Spain, Portugal, Britain, Italy. So this would be Germany, I guess. Theoretically, it looks a little. Obviously, it all looks different for the different time period. Poland would be. Fuck, I don't know where Poland is, especially with the different map. Unless maybe it's already absorbed.
But then Hitler hit him with the old, actually, you know what, dude, switcheroo. I'm sorry, I f***ed up. I'm gonna attack you now. I'm gonna invade you, because that seems like the move. And the Soviets were like, okay, Britain, you chill? We gonna be chill? And Britain was like, I don't know, dude. Yeah, sure. If you're gonna fight against the Germans, whatever. You got a lot of people. And because the Soviets became friends with the British people were friends with America, so tangentially, we were chill. And America jumped into the World War after the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, and that wasn't so cool. But this is not a video about World War II. I don't know what I'm doing right now. But even during the war, there were tensions simmering just below the surface, including the USSR's refusal to aid the Polish army, and the US excluding the Soviets from negotiations with Germany. After the US dropped atomic bombs in Japan in 1945, everyone said, oh, we're done. We're done? Holy sh**. The war was over, and the uneasy alliance between Russia and America became immediately paranoid, and not good. Many historians look at the decision to bomb Japan as a catalyst for the Cold War. Japan's defeat was all but certain, and the Emperor of Japan was like, we're done, you don't have to do anything, but America said, f*** you, kinda, pretty much. The US demanded unconditional surrender, meaning like, when this thing's over, we're not gonna debate anything. We won, you lose, you gotta do everything we say. And they were like, I don't know if we want to do that, and we were like, bombs! Bomb them! Many even argue that dropping the atomic bombs was a show of power by President Truman, and that nuclear bombs were used in a part to keep Soviets from gaining territory in the Pacific. So, like, it was, you know, it was to f*** up the Japanese people, but it was also like, hey, Russia, I know you're right up there, and we, you know, don't come over here. We're dropping crazy shit. We're microwaving people. But whatever the exact motivations were, the fallout from the atomic bomb created the perfect conditions for the Cold War. By the end of World War II, the US and USSR had built up a laundry list of animosities. That's the word I was trying to say. But more than any single incident, the root for the Cold War was an ideological one. Both countries were, like, fist-pumping the propaganda into people's mouths for capitalism and communism. But you know which teams were doing that. America and Russia were creating societies that feared and demonized each other so that they could use that anger and fear for political gain. And that narrative obviously continues to this day. That's not like an old-timey thing. In 2024, Florida governor and leather boot filled with yogurt, Ron DeSantis, signed a bill requiring all Florida public schools to teach the dangers and evils of communism. Kinda corny, but politicians are opportunists. They're gonna take every moment they can to scare the shit out of people and use that for political gain. And then in 1964, USSR Prime Minister Joseph Stalin, he's a big player in this story, he gave a speech claiming that peace could not exist under capitalism, reiterating Russian revolutionary Vladimir Lenin's theories about imperialism and war. In 1949, the US pledged to contain communism by doing a little thing called the Truman Doctrine, which said it must be the policy of the United States to support free peoples who are resisting attempt.
I feel like there's a lot of like blowing through things here. I'm sure eventually I'll have a better break, you know, onion peel a little slower.
subjugation. And then in the same year, NATO was created. You know NATO, the thing that Putin really hates right now. That was created after the USSR blockaded Berlin. And when West Germany joined NATO in 1955, the USSR spearheaded the creation of the Warsaw Pact. You guys getting all this? It's a lot of statements and dates. And I know that feels like history class, but I'm trying to make it fun. But we got to talk about this to talk about the cool shit. And I know I'm also probably pissing off a bunch of history buffs because I'm omitting a lot of shit. But Jesus Christ, I got to get through this. But my point is, like most huge
No, yeah, totally. I mean, like I said, it's a very everyman approach to what it is. So even like the framing being anti-Soviet from the start, whatever, I'm not. Like at first, I was like, oh, I want to see what this source is. Like, okay, there's a lot of it's going to be a lot of this specifically. So I'm just curious to see, based off of the history, kind of just because whenever a Joe Everyman just goes to look up these events, you're going to run into all of the American propaganda about it. It's going to be in your face the entire time. Like the amount of people that think that America did more in World War II than Russia comes up a lot, right? It didn't used to be a thing, but now it is a, well propaganded fact, or people have been convinced that we have, they're reinventing history in a certain way. So when you go to do some quick and easy research on certain things, you're going to run into a lot of that same misinformation or, biased view of the information, whatever it is. So that's kind of what he's running into. But I wonder, as he gets through certain other layers, if maybe some of those things seem like out of place because he's like, wait, these are the things that happen. That seems kind of fucked up. Okay, hold on. I'm just curious to see how it's seen.
Geopolitical events, there is no one way to explain how this happened. That's what I'm trying to get at. No one country has ever or could ever take the brunt full blame of the Cold War. The history of the Cold War is like watching a tennis ball fly back and forth over the tennis net. Only in this instance, the tennis ball is the threat of nuclear annihilation. So probably not a great analogy. It was actually the threat of nuclear war that made the Cold War stay cold. It actually didn't stop it from heating up because people were afraid of that shit happening. But that's not to say there was no conflict throughout the entire Cold War. But instead of actual, face-to-face combat with their own soldiers, these countries did a little thing called proxy wars. Chris, put some cool back. Put some cool when I say proxy wars. Like, proxy wars. I don't know. You don't have to. I don't know. So are you like an American born after 1995 and like me, anytime the Korean War comes up, you think to yourself, what the was that? We were taught a lot about wars in our history classes, but for some reason, the Korean War is like completely forgotten in American culture. And then when you hear North Korea is so up, you think to yourself, did we do that? What happened? What did we do in Korea? Well,
this is what I mean. Like right here, this is like, there are certain things that it's a long time ago, and it seems like that's the decent understanding. But then certain things that are closer to history and things that you can even see the impact. Because there is no USSR today, so you're kind of like, I guess it was bad. Okay, but like, well, there's a North Korea today, and that's what happened after the Korean War. And wait, why were we doing shit in Korea? Like, because we were doing it, right? It's harder to hide it. You know what I mean? So like, it's interesting to see, like, man, everyone talks about how bad Korea is, but like, didn't we do this? This is the normal perspective that the normal guy, but when he looks into it for like 10 seconds, he's like, huh? You know what I mean?
The Korean War is considered the first major military operation of the Cold War. Russia and China backed North Korea, while America and the UN supported South Korea. This proxy war was extremely bloody, like 3 million.
Like, it might not happen, but it's like, why did the UN back? The UN's supposed to be the good guys. Why did they back the thing that ended up being really bad? Wait, are Western influences in this types of conflicts actually not looking out for the best? And hold on,
people died within just 3 years of time. And while they signed some shit in 1953, no peace treaty was ever agreed upon, and this war is still technically ongoing. This results in a heavily guarded border named the DMZ, which is the demilitarized zone between the two countries, North Korea and South Korea. And this is where you get those clips of North Koreans trying to escape North Korea by running over that zone and just getting blasted with bullets. I don't know if I'm on the wrong side of the internet, but it's not fun to watch. But there's a reason people try and escape North Korea, because that sucks big donkey balls. The human rights violations of North Korea are considered crimes against humanity.
Okay, well, all right.
And many citizens are jailed or even executed for things like not clapping and
bro.
Enthusiastically enough for their supreme leader, Kim Jong-un. When I was a kid, it was Kim Jong-il, and I wasn't alive for, I don't think I was alive for the guy before him, but, you know, it's a dynasty of pieces of shit. But these motherfuckers get
Is he listening to Yao Mi Park? Is that what he...
brainwashed. It's honestly a little impressive how an entire country could be so thoroughly, you know, beat down by propaganda. Like, these people believe that the Kim family invented the hamburger and that they don't poop. And I know that you shouldn't make fun of those things because it is a really sad situation, but it is interesting nonetheless. So yeah, that was America and Russia fighting, but not really fighting, but that wasn't the only time we did that. For instance, how about the Vietnam War? We know a lot more about that as American citizens. The Vietnam War was eerily similar to the Korean War, with China and Russia backing the South Vietnamese and the US supporting the North Vietnamese. So it's the same, but they swapped polarities.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few times I'm like they're executed for not clapping. Like, bro, come on. You know, they eat rats, and rats eat. You know, the kids die, and the rats eat the kids, and the kids eat the rats, and it's like, you know, but they also have to pull the trains because trains don't run. You know, it's like, but there is the stupid shit like about how Kim Jong Un golfed for the first time and got 3 hole-in-ones or whatever. Like, there's the stupid shit like that, right? Like, there's some element of it. Yeah. And we also have our stupid shit. You're probably, I mean, we've seen the broadcasts, unless they're parody that we don't get or something. As I think that's how the information's been passed. But yeah, I mean, it's like, but we have stupid shit with our fucking big, beautiful boy president who's 6'4" and only weighs 229 pounds or whatever. It's like, and then like you look at any of the meetings where it's like, thank you, Mr. Trump. You are so wonderful and awesome, Mr. Trump. And you've been so strong and goodly when it comes to saving our DC area from all this crime. And it's like, okay, this is just what we say North Korea is like, you know? It's just gross. And then like having all the leaders sit in the Oval Office as he sits there and lectures them on how they, you know, and then everyone's like, yes, you've got it. Like all like the German prime ministers and like all these people just sitting in his, you know, it's just like, it's the same. It's the same. They don't think it's the same. It doesn't look the same to them, but it's this, you know.
I think from 1955 to 1975, the war cost 4 million lives, over half of which were civilians. Ooh, whoops. Now, Vietnam and the war that happened there could surround its own video. This is a very big topic with a lot of, you know, delicacies. But the reason for the war stemmed from decades of colonial rule by the Japanese and the French, and the political implications were massive. It inarguably changed American culture forever. It's important to lose sight of the importance of the Vietnam era as time marches on, with the conflict threw the U.S. into complete turmoil. It gave rise to a counterculture that changed politics, music, and drugs forever. And for a lot of U.S. citizens, it showed just how far the U.S. government would go just to squash dissent. Like the 1968, like Chicago, what was it? The Democratic Convention where a bunch of protesters got like gunned down in the street.
Look at those cops. Just wearing shirts. They have helmets on. That's the one piece of like armor they have. To help represent them as a police officer is the helmets. Now look at how cops are today. Man, it sure was crazy when police would come out and like crack heads in America. But thank God that never happens today. And thank God the forces aren't more militarized than what we're seeing here.
They don't teach you about that shit. Police use brutal tactics like pushing protesters through glass windows and throwing tear gas directly into their faces. It was an entire week and it left 500 protesters completely.
I mean, we're talking about people getting rubber bullets to the head and dying. Like when Hassan went to the LA protests, there's a video of a rubber bullet passing right by Hassan's area, and then it hit a protester in the head, and he ended up dying. Like they were like, "Oh my God, you can't show it," but this dude's head is like all crazy bloody, and that guy ended up dying.
Up and
and tear gas is considered a chemical agent that is not allowed to be used according to the Geneva Convention in war. But your own citizens, hey man, that's your own. That's you know what? That's you.
600 of them arrested. But Chicago wasn't nearly as deadly as the Kent State Massacre. In 1970, the National Guard killed 4 students and wounded 9 others at the Kent State University Vietnam protests. With a notable growing of lack of interest in this war from the people back home in the US, the government would pull out of the Vietnam War in 1973 at the Paris Peace Accords. And once Americans were out of Vietnam, the peace accord was immediately broken, and the South and North Vietnamese continued fighting. And then, who won? The North won. The North won Vietnam. And then in 1976,
Uncle Ho, yeah.
the country was reunified as the Socialist Republic of Vietnam. But once again, this is all related to the Cold War. This is the Vietnam War, Korean War, all Cold War, which is unbelievable to think about. And in the midst of all these proxy wars, we almost had a full-blown nuclear war. If anyone played Call of Duty, I think Black Ops 1, you're familiar with the Cuban Missile Crisis, are you not? Let's not forget about the Zombie Map 5. Chris, go ahead and put a picture of that.
It appears the Pentagon has been breached.
Zombies. Dude, I just looked up the zombies thing he was talking about. That's true. That's like 100%. Everything he said was true.
Cuban Missile Crisis is as close as the world has ever probably come to a nuclear war. In 1959, the Cuban Revolution saw Fidel Castro rise to power, turning Cuba into the first communist state in the Western Hemisphere. This threatened the U.S., and in 1961, they attempted to...
Why? Why did that threaten the U.S.? That these people have their own government? Also, didn't the U.S. put Batista in power? Wait, wasn't he a fascist dictator specifically put there? Isn't that a risk to Cubans? Right? Also, what about the Turkey missile crisis? Or the German missile crisis, or the Poland missile crisis? America's army bases all over.
Overthrow Castro with the Bay of Pigs invasion. So something that a lot of Americans aren't good at is geography. We don't know. We couldn't point to like Turkey on a map. But something that I found out pretty early on, but I found interesting.
Dude, Turkey's the easy one because I was like, whenever I always knew that Turkey was that weird little one that sticks out into that Mediterranean Sea area, and like it was like that's the name of a food, and I always like it was easy for me to point whenever I looked at it. Although now it's spelled differently.
Overthrow Castro with the Bay of Pigs invasion. So something that a lot of Americans aren't good at is geography. We don't know. We couldn't point to like Turkey on a map. But something.
Oh, he's just talking about Turkey in general. I thought he was talking about the missiles in Turkey pointed at Russia.
That I found out pretty early on, but I found interesting that a lot of Americans don't know. Do you know how close Cuba is to America? It's like a stone throws away from Florida. Like it is right there.
I mean, I live in Florida, so I know. Yeah.
So it made sense to be a little bit worried. And even though the invasion,
it's just interesting to see, right? So when you talk about American aggression in the Cold War, this is where people come from, right?
invasion was a horrible failure that fell apart in 2 days, it inspired the USSR to protect a Castro-led Cuba in the name of preserving communism. It's like old Karl Marx said, bros before overthrows. That's a Jimmy Pitts exclusive joke, everybody. Give applause. In 1962, Russian Premier Nikita Khrushchev began building a nuclear missile site in Cuba. Once the US found out, Kennedy was like, "Pah! What the blockade? What the was that, Cuba?" And Russia considered that to be an act of aggression. Secret messages were exchanged between Kennedy and Khrushchev, and though both leaders wanted to avoid conflict, neither wanted to seem weak, so a standoff began. Finally, it was time for the world to really see who had the biggest cock, and I think it was Kennedy, because that dude was the world was on the brink of nuclear war, and Kennedy was beginning to think an attack on Cuba might be necessary after a US spy plane was shot down over Cuba. After 13 days,
We're like, shoot the balloon down, goddammit. What's a balloon doing over America? How dare they spy on us? Well, they shot down our spy plane over their country, over their sovereign land. They shot down our plane? Okay, we've got to do something. Let's fake a revolution. And oh, no, it didn't work.
Soviets decided, hey, you know what? We'll take the nukes out of here. I don't know what we were doing, really. And then the U.S. pledged to never invade Cuba, which is nice, but, you know, they never did it. But that means nothing to Americans. Like,
Huh, where is Guantanamo Bay? Wait a minute. Is it in Cuba? Wait, is it actually American? Huh, weird.
We will invade you after we say we won't. That's our whole shtick. The Cuban Missile Crisis was a little too close for comfort for both superpowers. It spawned a direct telephone line between the White House and the Kremlin called the Hotline. And then the following year, they negotiated a little thing called the Partial Test Ban Treaty, which banned testing nuclear weapons underwater, in the atmosphere, and in outer space. So no more f***ing, what's that movie that came out? No more Oppenheimer shit, okay? No more blowing that shit up. We know what they do. We don't have to do that anymore. Whoa, did Tucker
The amount of nuclear bombs that have been blown up in testing is insane.
change his outfit? Don't worry about it. We're going to continue on. In 1958, the U.S. Air Force cooked up the top secret project A119, which was a plan to detonate a nuclear bomb on the surface of the moon. And why would they decide to do that? Excellent question. And the answer is... you. That's pretty much the long and short of it. The Soviets had just been a few steps behind the US in the nuclear arms race ever since the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but by 1957, the USSR had established itself as the leader in the space race by launching the first satellite into orbit. Now, losing ground in the space race to the Soviets got everyone in America all shook. They all got shooked up. So while the US was scrambling to get their space program in order, the military was over there and they were like, hey, let's just launch a nuke at the moon.
Hey, that's that's from what is it? Isn't that from Dr. Strangelove?
Maybe that would make us win. And although I made it seem like that, just to be clear, this wasn't like an idea that they had on the back burner and was thrown out by a hungover general at a meeting. It was seen as a viable option. The US had a team of scientists working on Project A1119, including a young Carl Sagan. But the scientific gains of launching a nuke at the moon was not the primary objective. The goal was purely shock and awe, like a fireworks show, except it really shows everyone the devastation
I had never heard of this before, so
that could happen. And to that end, the blast had to be impressive enough for the entire world to notice. Now, when you launch a nuke at the moon, I would assume everyone would notice, but you know, only half of the people could see it at once, so had to be a full moon, I guess. And this is probably why the US never went through with the whole blowing up the moon thing. The optics weren't perfect. Scientists who worked on the project claimed that the Air Force wanted a mushroom cloud so large it would be visible from Earth. But like the whole thing about mushroom clouds is that they need a dense atmosphere for that perfect little mushroom shape. And since the moon notably has
that's so funny. They go, yeah, we want a big ass cloud to form up on it. And it's like, but science is like, but there's no atmosphere, dog. What do you mean?
As a lack of atmosphere wasn't viable for that type of situation, and instead what would happen was it would have kicked up a whole shit ton of dust, and then like maybe the dust would have orbited around the moon, and then you have like a ring around the moon, which forever, that you just changed what we see around the moon forever. That's too much for a little fireworks show. While there's no official reason given,
it would like, I mean, I don't think the ring would really form that because like the Earth would pull it into our orbit way stronger. Like there might be a very small ring of dust, but even then, like Saturn's rings won't last forever and are eventually going to crash back down into the planet or some shit.
for the U.S. abandoning Project A11-9, it seems most likely due to the risk of public outcry and the lack of spectacle. No one really knew about this until 2000, whenever they, declassified the documents, and everyone was fucking scared about that, so obviously it was a good move not to go through with this. But if you thought nuking the moon was scary, obviously it's gonna get scarier than that. We're like not even halfway through this video. So even though stockpiling nukes was the name of the game in the nuclear arms race, the Soviet Union wanted to give the proceedings a little big dick energy, so they decided to make the thing called the Tsar Bomba. Now, the Tsar Bomba sounds like a Russian King Bob-omb from Mario Party. That is not the case here. It was actually the largest Russian nuclear bomb ever tested, showing the world that they were an equal nuclear power with the US. Tsar Bomba was a bomb that was so big it could actually never be used during war. It was 26 feet long and weighed 27 tons. It was heavier
But Carl Sagan, no.
than 4 elephants and produced a blast that was 1,500 times more powerful than Hiroshima and Nagasaki combined. It was impractical and stupid, but like all things during the Cold War, it was just a show of power to make other people know that you're not to be with. In 1961, the Tsar Bomba was dropped on a remote archipelago in the northern reaches of the USSR. And this thing was so big that in order to carry it all the way up there, they had to modify a bomb-carrying plane. Like, they had to make a special plane to carry the special bomb. And the bomb was so big that it had to be attached to a parachute to drop correctly, and the parachute itself weighed a ton. So that's 27 tons now. 28. And it also needed a parachute because if it didn't have a parachute, it would have gone off too quickly, and the plane that was flying it would die. So it had to have a parachute.
I'm not a big kill people kind of guy, but yeah.
slow it down so the plane could be safely 30 miles away so this thing could go off. And also, even though it was 30 miles away, the pilot still only had a 50% chance of survival. Who took that mission up? Who said, yes, sir, put me on that plane? Upon detonation, the Tsar Bomba created a 5-mile-wide fireball that could be seen from 630 miles away. The mushroom cloud was 40 miles high, which, I don't know how high the Earth is. That was a stupid question. Jesus Christ, don't even include that, Chris. The mushroom cloud was 40 miles high and stretched across 60 miles at its width, which, I don't know if you can even picture that in your head. It's really fucking big. It released the same amount of energy as 57 million tons of TNT and was 10 times more powerful than all of the military weapons used in World War II combined. And its blast waves orbited the Earth 3 times. I don't know what that means. I don't know if Americans felt that. They probably got scared. The blast completely destroyed a village 34 miles away, and towns over 100 miles away experienced things like, you know, collapsed roofs and all-around fear. Many countries condemned the Tsar Bomba test, claiming that it went too far, and at the time it was dropped, it was 20% of the size of every atmospheric nuclear test before it combined. So, pretty stupid, but it doesn't stop getting stupid. I'm gonna talk about it.
That's kind of crazy. I mean, I don't know if those towns just were like, we don't think they're going to get affected. Oh, fuck. You know, again, based off all the other information, I'm going, sure. You know, it's one of those like, yeah.
Another thing now. So we've been talking about the US and the USSR a lot, but we can't forget our little friends over the pond. Let's talk about Britain real quick. While they weren't the imperialist superpower that they were before the World Wars, they were still an integral part of NATO and developed their own nuclear capabilities during the Cold War. However, sadly, their nuclear...
Also, I'm pretty sure we have bombs bigger than the Tsar bomb. As if it was necessary.
Their ideas were painfully British. Like
the Moab or whatever.
For instance, we have Operation Blue Peacock, which, could you guys be less obnoxious with the way you name things? I asked Georgia a couple days ago what they called Ding Dong Ditch, and I think it was like Nicky Nacky Runna or something like that. Like, you people are ridiculous. After World War II, Germany was split in half between the East and West, and it was seen as the most vulnerable spot for the Cold War to turn hot. Britain was concerned about Russian forces invading West Germany from the north and began developing atomic landmines that could
Okay, Britain was worried about being invaded. Probably.
Remotely detonate to thwart an attack. These landmines weren't smart because they would leave a crater the size of a football field and would make the area it went off in impossible to occupy for most of human history. And if that wasn't stupid enough, there was one more problem. Northern Germany's temperatures often dropped below freezing during the wintertime. And you can imagine that's going to be wrong for some kind of science shit going on in the ground. Britain was concerned that the landmines would be comprised by the cold, so they came up with a finger-licking good solution: chickens. This is not a joke, okay? Everyone has to focus up real quick. This is a real part of history, and it's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. Live birds would be placed inside the landmine with enough food to survive for 8 days.
To keep it warm?
Okay? Their body heat would keep the mines warm enough for long enough so they could still detonate, and then the chickens would obviously die by the explosion, or they would just starve to death. Either way, the chicken is dying. After 4 years of development, Blue Peacock was ditched in 1958, and then the project was declassified in 2004 on April Fool's Day, because I can imagine the British government said, this was so stupid that maybe we can make people think that this is all one big joke. Alright, so that was a fun little aside about the British people. But the adults are talking now. Let's go back to the big ringers. In 1962, a year after the Soviets tested Tsar Bomba, the US went full supervillain and set off a nuclear bomb in space. The project was called Starfish Prime and was a part of a series of tests called Operation Fishbowl. That's how you name.
Hey, that's against the rules.
Name Britain. You name it like you're a fucking Bond villain. An aquatic-based Bond villain, but a Bond villain nonetheless. So the goal was twofold. The first objective was to basically freak everyone the out. Scare the out of people, as we do. And the second objective was to see what would happen. So
But, like, it's so weird to, like, okay, we're worried about this global war situation. We're worried about this nuclear arms race. We're worried about people with a finger on the button. So let's scare the shit out of them. And it's like, what?
We were just
I understand.
skiddly-scatting free jazz with
I
our
didn't think you were
nuclear
joking.
options at one point in history. In 1958, physicist James A. Van Allen discovered belts of radiation in outer space, and Operation Fishbowl set out to see what would happen to these belts after they were exposed to nuclear explosions. And going back real quick, James A. Van Allen is a terrible name. I hate that name. I keep looking at it and I hate it. I don't know if I just had to get that off my chest. Moving on. The blast was opposed by the Soviets, because of course it was, and they called the US Atom Mongers, which sounds like a really cool name for a ska band. But here's a fun fact: the USSR conducted a high-altitude nuclear test
I remember that one, yeah.
just 3 months after.
Brutal.
So, like, shut the f up. You guys are dorks. You did what we did, but you did it after us, which is always less cool. But this was the
I like to think the cat's like, I will not be used by the state. I will not be used in this way. It's like a Rogue One situation. I don't know.
Cold War. So narrative meant everything. You had to talk shit and then do the same thing other people were doing. It was all for show, a little kayfabe. The US was brazen about Starfish Prime, making no secret about blowing up nukes in space. And Americans were shockingly chill about the whole ordeal. A newspaper in Honolulu even ran the headline, "End blast tonight may be dazzling. Good views likely." Come on, kids, let's all go out on the lawn and look up at our devastating future. The nuclear explosion set off a light show that lasted a full 7 minutes, creating rainbow stripes and artificial aurora borealis in the sky. So it probably was
That's kind of crazy. I mean, I would be worried about, like, you know, going blind or some shit, but
beautiful, but once again, like, that's like literally looking into the eyes of God, the death god, whatever that was. In the immediate aftermath, satellites were destroyed, electrical services failed, street lighting systems went on the fritz, and circuit breakers were tripped, which set off tons of burglar alarms. But the lasting impact of Starfish Prime was the artificial radiation that they left out in space. This radiation belt was even stronger than the radiation belt that inspired the tests, and it lingered in space, destroying any satellite that happened to go into it for a full decade. But it's good to know it only takes a decade for that thing to go away, so more nukes in space, why not? So while the arms race had a way of spilling into space for some reason, thankfully our impulses to nuke the moon
damn, one nuke in space could fuck up so much bullshit panopticon intelligence shit. Just set up a belt of radiation that just fries a bunch of garbage. Although it probably wouldn't do near Earth orbit shit or whatever, but yeah.
were traded out for sending people into space. But there's just one problem. To boldly go where no man has gone before, you have to send a man in a place where no man has gone before, and we don't know if people just die. Like, if you go out into space, we don't know if people would just die because of that. We didn't know if they could survive, like, the travel to get there. We didn't know if they were in zero gravity, if they would just, like, disintegrate. Like, every time I think about astronauts, I'm like, everything in your body just kind of lays inside of there. When you're in space, like, all your organs are kind of just, like, free-floating, right? Or unless there's, like, fibers that keep
Well, I mean, they tested shit with, like, other living creatures, whatever.
together. I failed anatomy in high school. Even with the smartest minds on Earth crunching the numbers, there was still a lot of unknowns. And time was of the essence because in the Cold War, everything was about being first. So to expedite space exploration, the Soviet Union and the US turned to the animals to send them into space, and this gets real sad real quick. In the early stages of the space race, the USSR had America up against the ropes. They sent the first satellite into orbit in 1957. Chris, put up that clip of the Stinky Pete saying Sputnik. If you could find that and overlay it when I say Sputnik, that'd be fantastic. Chris.
Over and over.
Do not talk back to me.
Pussy.
Then they sent the first man into space in 1961 and conducted the first spacewalk in 1965.
Yuri.
The true pioneers of space exploration were dogs. By the time cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin, what the fuck is that name? Gagarin, I don't know how to say his name. By the time he circled Earth, dozens of Soviet dogs have been up there by that point. Russians preferred using dogs over other animals because they could build strong bonds that led to better obedience. And they trusted them with their lives, and then they get shot in a rocket up to space. I fucking hate this part of the story. And they were using, like, strays they found on the street because they believed that they were scrappy Moscow dogs that could really survive on their own. So these were strays that they pulled out of their normal lives and sent them up into the fucking space. K9 cosmonauts would undergo intense training, and while some exercises were basic dog training like stay, others were insane, like keeping them confined in small boxes for 20 days at a time and
That's a cute little dog.
riding in rocket simulators and centrifuges that stimulated high launch acceleration. You know how your dog hates being in a car? This is like a car times a million. Like, it's smaller than a car, but it also goes 1,000,000 miles per hour in a circle. They were also subject to surgical modifications that would allow scientists to monitor how spaceflight affects the body. And then in 1950,
Our cats are microchipped. It's probably something similar to that. Maybe not quite like the thing.
51, the Soviets sent 2 dogs into space, which I don't know how to pronounce their names, but they sent them to the edge of suborbital's flight. It lasted a total of 15 minutes, and in those 15 minutes, the dogs experienced 4 minutes of weightlessness. But good news, they made it back to Earth safely, and they were the first mammals to ever go into space and come back and not die. Only a few months later, Dzik, I think that's how you say one of their dogs' names, and another lady called Lisa went up into space, but their rocket parachute failed to deploy. And they both died on impact when they came back down. But, I mean, whatever. I mean, a lot of Soviet dogs did survive. However, there are some exceptions. This is the saddest part of the script. I kept trying to not get there, but it's just words on a page. I gotta keep reading them. You know about my girl Laika, the space angel? In 1957, the Soviets knowingly sent a dog on a suicide space mission. The USSR had just made the first huge gain in the space race by launching Sputnik, but Russian leader Nikita Khrushchev wanted another big space event to coincide with the 40th anniversary of the Bolshchikov whatever the f that thing is. Scientists only had a few weeks to put an animal into orbit, knowing full well that they did not have the capabilities to bring this thing back. They decided to pick my girl Laika, whatever, for sacrifice. To the Russians' credit, they tried to make her demise as human as possible. Their theory was that she would die from
humane
oxygen deprivation, you know, peacefully, or at the very least eat some poisoned food that they left for her, which is so f***ed up. However, after circling the Earth once, her capsule overheated and the malfunction and stress killed her less than a few hours into her trip. A faulty temperature control system seemed to be the blame, which was a part of how hastily this process was pushed through. And then Sputnik 2 eventually broke up into Earth atmosphere when it came back in, and it technically spread her ashes all across the Earth. And I find that beautiful. It almost made me cry a little bit. Woo! God damn, I haven't been sleeping. You can't blame me. But after all of that, the USSR...
Yeah, he was saying that that most actually lived or whatever. There was like the couple of like, oops, the accident with the parachute problem and some other stuff. But like, yeah. Honestly, losing humans, like we've lost a lot of humans, which is bad. The dogs don't have the same consent, whatever, but it's like, I'll be more upset over human deaths, you know what I mean? Personally, I mean, I agree that the dogs are sweet, and you know I love them, and yeah, but I'm like, okay, let's be adults, you know what I mean?
Reports on how she actually died. They usually said a much friendlier thing of like she died of like freezing to death or like the poison food that we fed her. In 1993, a Soviet scientist who helped send Laika into space said, "The more time passes, the more I'm sorry about it. We shouldn't have done it. We don't learn enough from..." Why am I crying? We did not learn enough from this mission to justify the death of the dog. But at that time, animal welfare paled in comparison to winning the Cold War, and Laika was viewed as a necessary sacrifice and a hero. And in the
I mean, I guess another way you could have looked at it was maybe like a rip Laika for sure. Was to have a dog that might be terminally ill or some shit, right? I mean, that has its own problems. Also, I mean, they have statues and shit to the dogs.
most Russian way possible. They put her face on stamps, and also her name became a brand of cigarettes. God bless her. Today, Laika is memorialized as a part of a statue at the Russian Cosmonaut Training Facility and has her very own statue at the research facility where she was trained. Her legacy continues to this day, and with the song Laika Party, the official entry for Ireland in the 2025 Eurovision Song Contest. And here's a line from that song that let's see if I can get through saying without crying. Through the comets and the stones, she is howling for her bones. I am good. I'm fine. I got it out. Okay. But we forgot to talk about America. And America loves one-upping, motherfuckers, so they decided to send a bunch of monkeys into space. It was traditional for monkeys from America to be sent into space, and it started much before NASA was even created. In 1948, the US Air Force put a male monkey into a capsule of a Nazi-designed V-2 rocket. Yeah, I forgot to mention,
Paperclip?
Operation Paperclip. A lot of our rockets were made by Nazis. We're not going to get into that whole thing. The monkey, named
coward? What the fuck? It's not even like just chilling, yo. What the fuck?
Albert suffocated before he reached space, so I don't know why I don't feel as bad for monkeys as I do dogs, but I don't, whatever. But that didn't deter the US, though. We were still gung-ho on the monkey ship. In 1949, Albert II was sent into space. We were like, well, whatever, who needs to name monkeys? Just keep giving them numbers. And he had a successful suborbital flight, but he did die when his parachute failed. But if you're concerned that we would stop trying then, you don't know America. Later that same year, Albert III died when his rocket exploded. 2 months later, Albert IV died when his parachute once again failed. Albert V died the same way, 1951. But finally, in September of that year, we brought one of our banana boys home safely. Albert VI successfully landed from his space flight. but he did die 2 hours after he landed, so I don't know if we should count that. Later in the decade, we were like, let's switch things up. Monkeys keep dying, let's send a squirrel named Gordo into this bitch. And finally, in 1958, a squirrel monkey named Gordo deployed his parachute after a successful mission and fell to his death after his parachute failed. I don't know if I f***ed up the script part here. It said are squirrel monkeys real? Alexa, what's a squirrel monkey?
A squirrel monkey is a type of monkey that
Alexa,
lives in
stop.
tropical...
So I guess that's a real kind of monkey. I don't know. I don't know if I don't know.
I'm not quite sure how to help you.
I'm not talking to you. Guess squirrel.
I've used like the Google thing a couple of times where it's like, okay, what's this real fast? Whenever you want to Google something, I don't know. Just, yeah, like when you're in like a conversation with somebody, you don't feel like pulling out your phone or you don't have it by nearby, but I guess it's fine. I don't know. Something about Alexa, though, just seems worse.
Monkeys are real. Moving on. Ignoring the previous decade of space monkey fatalities, NASA was ready to tackle human spaceflight by the early 60s. Yeah, monkeys kept dying, but time for humans, I guess. They pivoted to chimpanzees for the next phase of testing during the space race, primarily because humans and chimps are so closely related. We share more DNA with chimps than any other animal, and also chimps are incredibly smart. They know how to rip off penises, and that's all I know about them. Instead of merely being passengers like dogs and monkeys of past space missions, scientists wanted to see if chimps could complete operational tasks during missions. The US sourced 40 chimps from an exotic animal dealer in Miami who had just bought the primates from an African trapper. Like, what the f are we doing? That's the most American way we could ever get something done.
Dude, the Tiger King of like the Cold War era selling stolen monkeys. Oh my god.
Buying chimps from a fella in Miami. NASA trained them for space by using G-force simulations and taught them to pull levers by electrocuting the soles of their feet. From the class of 40 primates, chimp number 65, renamed Ham, was chosen for the mission. Ham's rocket launched into space about 1,400 miles per hour faster than anticipated and reached an altitude of about 42 miles higher than planned due to a crack that caused air pressure loss. I just imagine those scientists watching Ham's spaceflight just being like, there he goes. Go, that's too fast, too far, oh god. But despite everything I just said, Ham would not face the same fate that the Alberts before him did. His suit offered him enough protection where he wasn't burned up and he was able to complete his tasks and make it home safely. Well, kind of safely. There's more caveats to this. And also, he was wearing a little suit. I find that adorable. After his 16-minute flight, he landed about 132 miles away from where NASA intended him to. Because there was a crack in his capsule, he nearly drowned waiting for his rescue. After seeing photos of Ham during his rescue, Jane Goodall said, "I've never seen a chimp with more terror in his face." Ham was pretty traumatized after the event. He even refused to get in his chair for post-op photos. But as a result for torturing a chimp that had been ripped from his home in Cameroon, Alan Shepard Jr. would become the first American in space just 4 months later. As for Ham, he would spend the next 2 decades alone in a cage in his Washington, D.C. zoo until he was eventually moved to a zoo in North Carolina where he died in 1983. So sad for Ham. After his death, the Smithsonian wanted to put his body on display, but the public outcry was swift, and instead, his skeleton was removed and kept in the National Museum of Health and Medicine, while the rest of his remains were buried at the International Space Hall of Fame. So he was a famous chimp, but he was a sad chimp. So let's change it up a little bit. Even though the front runners of the space race were obviously the US and the USSR, France was doing some stuff sometimes. It's cute, really, to think that a country like France thought they were going to the moon or some shit. I'm sure all they wanted to do was smoke ridiculously skinny cigarettes next to the Sea of Tranquility. But just like the Brits with Blue Peacock, the French really out-Frenched themselves with their contribution to the Cold War. In 1963, they sent the first and only cat that has ever gone out into space. Which, if I had to pick the most French animal, it would definitely be a cat. Felicette was one of 14 cats who were subjected to confinement.
Just look at these little kitties. I like this face. I just, dude, what is this? What is this forehead thing? He just looks cute. Chubby cheeks. This cat is like escaped or something.
Rocket noises and centrifuge sessions, and she was chosen for the operation because she was the only cat who didn't gain weight during stressful situations, which my poor Abby, I cannot imagine. Oh my god, I can't imagine doing this to my cat. With electrodes in her brain, she was rocketed into space for 15 minutes and survived the landing to become one of the most important figures in cat history. But sadly, there was no parade for the sweet little kitty. No one seemed to give a shit. The French chose to send the cat into space because at the time they were widely used for neuroscience. And Felicette was euthanized 2 months after her space journey to figure out what happened in her brain. you guys, honestly. I'm always mean about the French, but that is dog behavior from dog people. All right, now let's stop making fun of the French and talk about spies. Spies are fun, and a lot of spies did do things during the Cold War. Espionage predates the Cold War by about 3,500 years. The earliest evidence of spying comes from ancient Egypt, and it's been part of kingdoms, regimes,
Frustrating, upsetting, dumb, cruel.
and governments ever since. The backdrop of the Cold War was especially ripe for spy games. With the looming possibility of nuclear war and the constant struggle to lead the world in space exploration, the US and USSR were constantly trying to steal top-secret information from each other. This led to a wave of communist paranoia in the US known as the Second Red Scare. During the mid-1940s and through the 50s, known piece of shit and Senator Joseph McCarthy and FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover accused many left-wing actors, politicians, and educators of having communist ties or being Soviet spies. I talked about it in my Ren Fair video. For some reason, those things were connected. American citizens were subject to the FBI using illegal tactics like burglarizing their homes, opening their mail, and wiretapping. The House Un-American Activities Committee used the subpoena power of Congress as a tool to intimidate citizens. To put it mildly, we were spinning our wheels because of the Soviets, but honestly, it wasn't that far-fetched. 4 years after the US dropped the atomic bombs that ended World War II, the USSR was able to test its first nuclear bomb. This is thanks to Soviet spies who stole information while working on the Manhattan Project. They talked about it in Oppenheimer. Wasn't a big plot point, but that was a big issue that happened. For example, German-born British scientist Klaus Fuchs, who was part of Britain's atomic bomb development program before being sent to the US to work on the Manhattan Project. In 1950, the US discovered Fuchs' espionage work, and he was detained by British authorities. And the discovery of this dude led to the US to have an even bigger ring of spies who infiltrated the Manhattan Project, led by Julius and Ethel Rosenberg. The couple met as a part of the Young Communist League and became spies once Julius landed a job as an engineer and inspector at the Army Signal Corps Engineering Lab. Rosenberg gave exclusive documents to the Soviets through a network of recruiters that included project engineers, chemists, and military scientists. The couple was arrested in 1950 and were guilty of doing all this bad shit. In 1951, they were given the electric chair, making them the first American citizens ever executed for espionage. Most Europeans were outraged over their deaths, and it was widely debated their innocence. But when the Soviet Union fell in the 90s, newly obtained Russian documents clearly showed Julius Rosenberg's involvement in espionage. Ethel's role, however, is still questioned, but you know, she was f***ing him, so she probably was aware he was doing something. But the Rosenbergs weren't the only spy team who were sucking and f***ing during the Cold War. In 1965, Karl and Hanna Koshir left communist Czechoslovakia and posed as defecting dissidents. When Karl asked the Czech authorities how he was supposed to infiltrate the CIA, they told him, "That's up to you, pimp, figure it out." And Karl went big. He went biggie mode. He went biggie mode on their asses. The Koshirs became American citizens in 1971, and they lived large in New York City. They drove around in a blue BMW and lived in luxurious apartment buildings with actors and athletes. Hannah sold diamonds and had a taste for expensive fur coats, while Karl split his time between Columbia University and the CIA. They were the quintessential New York power couple, and they'd probably live in Williamsburg if they could in modern era. But behind the scenes, Karl infiltrated American security agencies as a CIA translator, passing along sensitive documents to the Czech secret police. And that wasn't the only way these young fangs got classified information. They did it with their bodies. They out. They were f***ing around. They were getting information from people at sex parties. Ever been to one of those? Probably not, you f***ing virgin. Of course, US agents aren't supposed to attend sex parties because it puts you in a pretty compromising position, but the heart wants what the heart wants, not to quote Woody Allen and his daughter. These two were plunged into a swinging scene that included CIA officers, Pentagon officials, and at least one US senator. And it's funny to think that these dudes stopped doing this. All our politicians are having sex with each other all the time. That's my conspiracy. The Koshir's wife swapped their way through the intelligence agencies and politicians, bumping uglies to gather tons of intelligence for the KGB. They are eventually caught and imprisoned for 2 years, eventually making their way back to Czechoslovakia as part of a spy swap. When they arrived home, a gold Mercedes was given to them and a parade was thrown in their honor for literally f***ing their way to the top. Now, this was pretty common with KGB agents, and a former KGB agent was asked why sex was used so much during these espionage acts, and he said, "In the West, you ask your men to stand up for their country. In Russia, we ask our young women to lay down." Good God. Sexpionage isn't a creation of movies or TV. It is a actual spy tactic. And just like other skills crucial to intelligence agencies, it's one that's taught to agents. Ex-CIA agent Jason Matthews claims that the Soviets created their state school number 4 as a training ground for sexpionage. Here, students...
Okay, looks like that was an image of like a health class, right? Because it's not like you gotta crank up your ovaries to be extra horny, you know? No. Also, let me believe the CIA guy. Hold on.
Students, also known as sparrows, would learn tips and tricks on how to seduce their targets to give up information, or luring their targets into, sticky situations so they would give up secrets. And I mean, I'm not into that freaky shit, but if you're tied up with, your back and balls hanging out, you probably say whatever you can to get that iron grip off.
Weird. I mean, they're banks. Every company lays off fuckers all the time. Well, those fuckers lay off workers all the time. That's just what they do. They lay off a portion of the labor and they say, okay, other part of the labor, do their job too. And be happy you get to keep your job. So you're doing more work for the same pay. All right, bye. I got laid off. Well, they left this entire state. They just pieced out. Also classic. Literally that happens all the time. Well, I guess maybe you're not from America, but yeah.
Off them nuggies. These techniques are also referred to as setting honey traps. And the Soviets often recruited people who were already in the military for sexpionage, but that wasn't always the case. Often college students and actresses were also recruited for their looks and intelligence. And once students were in class, they were given the fly course on all things sexpionage. Their training included physical tasks like martial arts training, hand-to-hand combat competitions, and firearm practices. And also more cerebral things like learning foreign customs and how to talk without a Russian accent, though I think that having a Russian accent is probably harder than—
I thought you said you got fired before, but I guess, yeah, it's basically the same thing, right? Different, but basically the same.
Not, but I understand why that'd be a red flag. They were even trained carefully on how to eat caviar and open bottles of champagne, depending on the tradition of the country they were spying on. And of course, most importantly, they learned about sex and how to do it good and how to make fellas big. I don't know if you can put that in, Chris. I don't know. That was funny though. I'm in extra tug mode right now. Put up the picture for extra tug.
Well, fired is like different than being laid off because the job is removed specifically. Fired is usually like, oh, this performance is not decent. You're no longer to be in this position, and we'll get somebody else to do it. When you're laid off, it's like, oh, these jobs, we're getting rid of these jobs. Actually, we don't want to do them. We don't want to pay for these jobs anymore, so they're gone now. So it's not your fault. Sorry, bro. It's just we don't want the job anymore. So usually it comes with less stigma, I suppose, because it's more on the company for doing it. So it just adds extra stink on the company for kind of like yoinking back the job they were giving out before. But yeah. Well, if the job is still open and someone else can get it, at least it's like a layoff removes jobs from the labor market, whereas a firing is just an employment gap until someone else fills it in. You know what I mean? So like, especially when you look at like the global economies or like, whatever, the more layoffs happen, the job market itself is shrinking, and it creates an unemployment issue. Whereas small individual jobs being either quit or firing, that's kind of a normal flow for things. I mean, by next year, they might have positions open again, right? So, and also, there's obviously some people working, so that's every job. Anytime anybody goes into a field, it's like you're just hoping that field's going to exist when you go to get the job. Yeah. There's that too. Those lies. Although those usually, there's a certain way that some of those like fake job listings get evened out, or maybe I'm misremembering some stuff, because that's where a lot of the adjustments in the job market, because they look at what they're being told, and then they actually end up looking at what is through all the tax information or something. That's where like we have this gigantic jobs number discrepancy of the last year. It was like 1 million jobs were miscounted because again, they tell you they have all these jobs, but they didn't actually have those jobs, right? Yeah, it starts with estimates and just things. We just take their word for it at first, but then because people actually care about those numbers and they don't take them, they don't just trust them. You know what I mean? They actually have to look into it because, at least according to them, these are very important things. And they know these fuckers are liars, you know? So, but again, there could still be, it's still millions of jobs. You can't possibly get every single one of them marked correctly, but you figured the margin of error is within whatever percentage, right?
So people know about it. Thank you. Students were taught how to get information from agents by learning the art of seduction, and classes often revolved around watching sex documentaries and studying the Kama Sutra. In some classes, students were even forced to expose themselves to get better at sex techniques. And after their crash course on sex education, each student was given their own sexy lingerie and sent out into the world to their way through everything they need to get done. While they were often covertly embedded into foreign agencies, sex spies were also sent to swanky clubs and five-star hotels in Moscow to seduce traveling diplomats. And sometimes, to help intel, they would often wear fake nipples that were actually microphones to figure out what people... If I was having sex with a young lady and one of her nipples was, different, I'd at least try and pick at it. I don't know. But it's not all about the ladies and sex espionage.
Well, like under a bra, having the nipple be where the microphone is kind of makes sense because people would expect, it's like, oh, look, there's a bump. Ah, that means you're horny. Like, nope, it's just a microphone. You'd probably have two. You probably wouldn't make one very obvious, but still, yeah.
The Germans were doing a lot of things with boys with big wangs. East German counterintelligence agencies focused on male agents, known as Romeos, to employ sex espionage tactics. But since they were setting honeypots primarily for women, they had a different crash course on how to get this done, and namely, they had to teach men how to listen to women, which I think is so funny. And this is not some hacky, female comedian bit from the 90s. They literally had to teach these men how to be, good husbands and good, partners and listen to women yammer on all day. Am I right, fellas? Jeez, I don't put that in. Romeos were recruited for likability, charm, and ability to listen. The idea was that by being charming and knowing how to make themselves the center of attention, women would be drawn to
The bar is so low.
them. But then, because they could actually listen, the target would enjoy talking to them and confide more and more information. This is literally how I pulled my girlfriend. I was funny, I just listened to her talk all day, and I enjoy it, she enjoys it. I would be so good as a Romeo, dude. I'm not tall, though. That's probably an issue. I don't know. I could get it done. Even more than Sparrow's sexual seduction, Romeos were pretty f***ed up. They didn't just they made you fall in love with them. This was a long con that would happen over years and years and eventually often ended in marriage proposals. Once a Romeo was married, they would reveal that they were a spy, but for a friendly country or ally like Canada. Then they would tell their wife that in order for them not to be taken from their country, they would need to give her the information to satisfy their bosses. It was such a successful tactic that by 1978, they had at least 53 women compromised by Romeos. By 1980, NATO had started a list to help single female secretaries in order to ensure they weren't marrying East German spies. But guys, this is a message to the fellas out there. Obviously, you don't have to be macho machismo to get done. You just have to be friendly, charming, and listen to ladies, which I know is not that easy. It's easier on paper, but Jesus Christ, these men were ruining governments by just listening to ladies. You don't think you can find you incels, you losers? But while sex provided an effective tactic for helping the Soviets steal state secrets, the US had another idea, which arguably is almost just as fun, and that answer was drugs. Let's do drugs. Let's just do those. While searching for a truth serum, the US ended up drugging tons of military personnel and civilians without their consent. These drug experiments were used to make, people less violent and make interrogations easier, but at the end of the day, it just ended up f***ing up a lot of people's brains. It was the Cold War, so in the eyes of the government, the end justified the means, even if the means violated, basic human rights. From 1948 to 1975, the U.S. Army tested chemical weapons on American soldiers at their Edgewood Arsenal factory. These experiments were very classified and affected over 7,000 soldiers. Many of the soldiers were technically volunteers, though they were often misled about what exactly they were signing up for. Like the use of deadly sarin gas, which was accidentally developed by the Nazis while trying to invent a cheap pesticide. Is it just me, or does science feel like a crazy shot in the dark sometimes? Like when you accidentally try and develop a pill for hypertension and then all of a sudden you've made Viagra. Like Grandpappy now has a raging boner. Like That's how it happened. Or you're trying to kill some weeds and then you develop a gas that could kill thousands of people with a click of a button, you know? Whoops! The sarin gas at Edgewood was so strong that birds passing over the gas chambers following sarin tests dropped dead from the sky and regularly had to be removed from the roof. Some subjects of Edgewood's chemical treatment didn't even volunteer at all, like professional tennis player Harold Blawer, whatever. He checked into the New York State Psychiatric Institute in 1952 after a bout of depression following his divorce. Edgewood Arsenal had struck a deal with the Psychiatric Institute that allowed them to secretly test chemicals on patients, and he was injected with 450 milligrams of mescaline and died that following day. In the 60s, psychiatrist Colonel James Ketchum joined Edgewood. He became known as Dr. Delirium. Never a good sign when a ranking officer has a name like that. It's like, you know, Colonel Kill-em-all. Not always not good. Dr. Delirium was obsessed with the idea that chemical weapons were more humane than traditional weaponry. He was especially fixated on LSD, which is not good to have an evil scientist be throwing that at people all the time. He believed that the Soviets were stockpiling large amounts of LSD for military
Oh, is this the gay bomb thing?
for use. Veterans who experienced Edgewood claimed that they were going there for military, you know, training, and in reality, they were experiencing chemical weapons and crazy hallucinogenics. Soldiers would hallucinate for days after their tests and go temporarily blind, and some tried to kill themselves. Many soldiers left that place scarred for life, full depression, tried to kill themselves after they were there, and had full-blown nervous system disorders. So if you're a soldier right now and someone tells you to take a pill, just don't do it, because I'm guessing this shit hasn't stopped. Now, it's hard to overestimate the hysteria that surrounded the Cold War. Even a rumor or error in report
They're like, hey, we own you. You gave us your life. So here we go.
could lead to decades of top secret experiments. This is precisely how the CIA came to develop MK Ultra. In the 50s, the US was increasingly paranoid that the Soviets were outpacing them in interrogation techniques and technology. A lot of this was based on false reports from the Korean War that Soviet-backed North Koreans developed mind control capabilities. This, to use a technical term, is insane. No one has ever made full mind control possible yet, but the CIA was convinced. In 1953, they created a little number called MK Ultra. In many ways, MK Ultra was a continuation of a scientific experiment that started in Nazi concentration camps, so not a good start. Not only were many of the experiments based on Nazis' work, but like I said, Operation Paperclip, they were hiring Nazis to do these experiments. The work was headed by chemist Sidney Gottlieb, who was known as the Black Sorcerer. And if you're keeping score at home, yes, that is another comic book level supervillain name. The Black Sorcerer was desperate to find a truth serum to use while interrogating prisoners of war. And while he never fully developed mind control, they were using things like LSD to really see how easy it is to interrogate someone when they are completely blasted off into outer space. In the early 50s, the Black Sorcerer arranged for the CIA to buy the entire world's supply of LSD for $240,000. Ironically, that means the CIA was responsible for bringing LSD, the drug that really pushed the counterculture in the 60s, to America. And due to the classified and unethical nature of the experiments, the project spread across 80 different institutions like college campuses, prisons, and hospitals. Often, the researchers involved didn't even know their work was going towards the CIA, though they may be playing a little coy because these experiments demonstrated a large amount of lack of humanity. From verbal and sexual abuse to electrocutions and torture, it's clear that MK Ultra wanted to break humans. One mental patient in Kentucky was given LSD for 174 consecutive days without his consent. Others were heavily drugged and sat next to a record that was playing vocal suggestions on a loop, or even left to float in a sensory deprivation tank while accidentally filled up with acid.
They're just trying shit. They're just well, what if we get them really high and then just tell them what to do a lot? What, maybe that'll work.
Still don't know the full extent of MK Ultra because thousands of documents relating to the project were destroyed in the 70s, and I hate to be that guy, but that sounds suspicious as shit. I mean, if you accidentally destroy thousands of documents, you were probably doing some horrifying tasks. Yeah. Fortunately, a few MK Ultra files were misfiled and found during a government investigation of the CIA. And in 1976, President Ford issued an executive order that prohibited experimenting with drugs on humans without their consent. But, you know, weird that we have to have an order for that. You know, it's like, oh, we'll pass a bill so this doesn't happen again. Why were you doing that in the first place, you f***ing creeps? And while some MK Ultra, you know, experiments...
Yeah, I've always... I mean, I never knew. I always thought of like there's cops, and then the next level is FBI, and the next level is CIA. Dumb shit. Not how that works, but it didn't take much to be like, oh yeah, we should definitely disband the CIA. Oh yeah, for sure. Oh yeah, this is not helpful. Supposed to be the organization, right? That like looks outward for threats. All we do is fuck up shit on the inside of America. Yeah, fuck this. We don't need this. That's not good.
Experimentation people were scarred for life. There's some like big hitters on this list that turned out to be part of MK Ultra. Whether it was a positive experience or not, there's still no doubt that it would change you. For one, we had Ken Kesey, the author of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, who had such a great time during his MK Ultra experiments that he would host the iconic acid test in San Francisco that turned a generation onto LSD. So he was into it. He was thrilled to go through that. Some people are made for LSD. I'll say that. If I ever took an hallucinogenic, I would completely freak out and make my friends call the hospital. But some people take really kindly to it. And then you have Robert Hunter, the Grateful Dead lyricist, who wrote the lyrics like "Your rain falls like crazy fingers." So yeah, that checks out. That dude loved acid. And then there was like mob boss Whitey Bulger, the guy from where I'm from, Massachusetts, who was like, you know, the Irish mob, who was a gigantic piece of shit. He was part of MK Ultra too. He was dosed with LSD 50 times while volunteering.
There were some serial killers too, weren't
he
there?
He murdered 11 people. And most disturbingly, out of all of them, was Charles Manson. You know, the guy who's like, "I'm a bum, I'm a wino." Yeah, you ever seen that? Put up the interview he does where he does that.
I'm nobody. I'm a tramp, a bum, a hobo. I'm a boxcar and a jug of wine.
This cult leader used many of the same tactics as MK Ultra, keeping his members on a steady dose of LSD while manipulating them sexually. And while it isn't proven, author Tom O'Neill book Chaos makes a case Manson being involved in the projects, and I think it's pretty obvious that he actually was part of MK Ultra. But allegedly. Although f*** him, it's the CIA. What are they gonna do, sue me? And drug...
Well, was he a part of it as in like a researcher, or was he part of it as like a test subject? You know what I mean? I thought he was supposed to be a test subject.
Weren't the only questionable experiments going on during the Cold War. Science in general had a very disturbing think outside of the box vibe. It's obvious that these world leaders were willing to do whatever they could to get an edge over the competition. From using Nazi innovations to torturing their own citizens. But just like the space race, some of the most imaginative scientist efforts
I mean, compare the two different atrocities.
Came from the Cold War, involved hellish treatments of animals. MK Ultra, for instance, wasn't only about humans. The CIA was using animals with mind control for some reason. Declassified documents from 1967 show that the US government successfully created a type of mind control in dogs. By electrically stimulating their brains,
I mean, you already trained dogs.
scientists were able to control their movements by hijacking their reward centers. They achieved this by embedding an electrode into a mound of dental cement and then implanting that in a dog's skull and running connections past the dog's shoulder blades. But once again, what are you gonna get at you could just train a dog. Why are you moving it with electrodes? And the dog can only be controlled within 600 feet, but by hitting buttons, you can make the dog come back, run in a circle, and make it stop. So, whatever, you had a remote-controlled dog. According to government records, 6 of these mind-controlled dogs were created, but never were really fully used in the field. And they ran into a bunch of issues while testing this technology, namely, you know, like, infections was a big one. Also, wounds that the dogs suffered from having a wad of cement implanted in their brains, which, you know, overall would hurt efficiency. It would compromise efficiency when their dog brain is swelling. And not to be outdone, the Soviets were doing some weird shit with dogs too. Soviet scientist Vladimir Demikov was a pioneer in organ transplants. He was one of the first guys to do like an organ transplant, a heart transplant, lung transplant, liver transplant. But because this was
Jesus
the Cold
Christ.
War, he was also responsible for another truly unhinged first, the first head transplant. Demikov started working on head transplants in 1954, performing the surgery over 20 times. And this was hardly top secret work. Demikov saw this as like the next big step in transplant surgery. It was so out in the open that in 1954, Time magazine traveled to Russia to capture the 24th attempt at creating a two-headed dog. They documented the process, which by that time has been done so many times in a row that it only took 3 hours to get it done. Both dog heads could hear, see, smell, and swallow, but they didn't share a stomach. Whatever the transplanted head drank flowed onto the floor. You might be wondering what the point of all this was. And that's a very good question. Even though Demikov's early animal transplants paved the way for modern-day organ transplants, there isn't really any good reason for a head transplant. It had no practical medical application whatsoever. And also, it was practically a death sentence for both of the dogs involved. The longest any of these two-headed dogs would live was 29 days. Whatever Demikov's motivations were for this horrific experiment,
That's... I mean, it's weirdly, yeah. It's like there's definitely incredible the fact that they had a dog head attached to another dog, but that other dog's esophagus just dribbles out. It's just unconnected, but it's still alive and functioning. like, how would you even get blood flow to that esophagus that just ends? And it's like, that's incredible. It's also sad to take a dog, cut its head off, and then sew it onto another dog, ultimately killing the other dog too. But it's like, that's incredible. Like, and then also like, oh, look, I'm the one that pioneered like every organ transplant possible. It's like, what? That's it. Yeah. What? It also, like, those other organ transplants are so, like, obviously useful and valuable, but then the head transplant is, like, also just impressive, but just sort of pointless. It's confusing, but maybe there's more details that aren't there, just because, like, obviously there's functional science involved to the point where even the stuff is being used. It's just, what the fuck?
It inspired the future work of American scientist Dr. Robert White. But in true U.S. fashion, we used monkeys instead of dogs. Starting in 1970, Dr. White would perform head transplants on over 30 monkeys. And once again, to no scientific benefit did that happen. No reason to do that at all. We learned nothing from these experiments. But hey, two-headed monkey. Though dogs and monkeys were the animal heroes of the Cold War, the U.S. got cats involved with Project Acoustic Kitty. It sounds like the name of a feline-friendly folk band, but at the end of the day, they were just trying to turn cats into spies, which is interesting. The idea came to agents in 1960 while noticing the feral cats were roaming around unnoticed by government officials during secret meetings. By leveraging the constant presence of cats with their natural curiosity, the CIA developed a plan. They would implant transmitters into cats' necks, and they would train them so they could go near government officials and they could spy in on what people were saying. Or, in the crude words of a U.S. officer, they slit the cats open, put batteries in him, and wired him up. But sadly, the CIA quickly found out the cats don't do what you want. They couldn't give two f***s about what you tell it to do. And as a cat owner, I can confidently say that the cat at my feet right now is an absolute nightmare. Isn't that right, Abby? Yeah, you're a piece of shit. The cats would wander off whenever they got hungry. And hey, you know what? Cats are always hungry. So they added another wire in the cat that would override the cat's hunger. And finally, the CIA was ready to deploy their covert cat spy operation in the Russian embassy in Washington, D.C. They released the cat from an unmarked van outside of the embassy. And before it even get going, it got hit by a taxi and died. So, plan over. The project was ditched in 1967, costing $20 million taxpayer dollars, so glad we got that through. But that $20 million was truly just a drop in the bucket. There is no official number, but estimates of Cold War spending easily amounts to trillions, dedicated to bombs, drugs, blasting animals into space, and fighting other countries' wars. The end of the 4-decade conflict was just as
if you add all that together, yeah, sure.
As its beginnings. For many, it was the fall of the Berlin Wall that signaled the end of this conflict. The Berlin Wall was built in 1961, becoming a physical manifestation of the ideological divide between the East and West. When the citizens of East and West Germany descended upon the wall on November 9th, 1989, they brought picks and axes to literally tear it down. A month later, the US and USSR would verbally declare the war over at the Malta summit, but we already knew that happened. It was the equivalent of your parents telling you they were going to get a divorce when you've been seeing the writing on the wall for at least 4 years. USSR officially disbanded on December 26, 1991, and as the Iron Curtain fell, the German rock Scorpions took the stage. Their 1991 single, Wind of Change, served as a soundtrack to Germany's reunification. Also, conspiracy theorists believe that the song was written by the CIA to help unify the two sides. I think that's a little far-fetched, but it's fun to talk about. And even though these rumors have been thoroughly debunked, it honestly isn't any crazier than sex spies or two-headed dogs. The legacy of the Cold War is complicated, but it left Russia and America with 5,000 warheads each. So while the immediate threat is gone, the cool breeze of the Cold War haunts geopolitical policy to this day, in events like Russia invading Ukraine or Elon Musk proposing we nuke Mars. Most leaders and politicians are opportunists who take fear to consolidate power. It's a tale as old as time. So maybe instead of risking countless lives to settle our ideological differences, we just need to fully embrace sports diplomacy and turn the Olympics into a violent bloodshed that everyone knows we are taking this very seriously. New videos every Saturday and every other Wednesday. Like, comment, and subscribe to Extra Tug while you're at it. $4 a month. You get a new video. Now you get to see the videos a day earlier, right before they come out. You get to vote on the videos we're going to do later. You have a direct line to comment at me because I read all the comments over there. So, you know, just have fun. There's a lot of names going across the screen. This video is long as I can't believe I got it all done. I did it in 2 takes. So that's good. I thought I was going to have to take a lot more time to do that. Anyway, thank you.
Okay. Not what I thought, but it makes sense that he would be more like interested in the random two-headed dog things. And I learned a couple different things, for sure. All right. I have a few different some more news videos that I've been wanting to watch. They're piling up, so I'm definitely gonna like pound through a couple of these. And again, I got turned on to a channel called Red Pen that might have some decent stuff for like actual like Soviet and like not Soviet, but stuff for like history, understanding about socialism and the USSR and all that stuff. So, okay, let me close this out. I don't mind this one. I have like the lo-fi beat, Halo and or a Hollow Knight. That's just different. That's Den's music. Okay, cool. I'm good.
Huh. I keep getting targeted ads for coffins, like all coffins. Something called Tomb for One More, Blow a Casket, an app called Crypt with no Y, of course, whatever. Clocking in. Hey friends, sup. That stands for Snake Coup, which perfectly brings me to today's subject, book bans. Because here's some news. Most US states are either banning books or fighting to unban books or fighting to unban the books they banned in the first place. And hey, I know what you're thinking. What are books? I also had to Google them. I went down a whole rabbit hole, which is a phrase, apparently, referencing a book. It turns out that books are assorted stacks of pressed tree pulp that have information on them. That information is often put there by nerds, which makes fearing or banning books real weenie stuff. You scared of nerd books? Come on. Banning them? Come on. Can't even burn them? At least book burners can get a fire going. Book banners have not proven that. You're not gonna pass that Final Four on Survivor, you book banners. Hey, did you know Survivor's been on TV for 24 years and counting? They're going on season 50 like it's The Price is Right. Survivor is the book of network TV shows. Network TV being the book of entertainment when you think about it, which I will not. So imagine if someone tried to ban Survivor. They'd look like a real weenie, right? Case closed. Okay, but for good measure, let's talk about book bans a little more. Book bans are for weenies. Hey again. So if you live in the United States, you might live in an area where books are getting banned. There might even be some people fighting against those bans, or maybe there aren't. Either way, we are a book ban nation. The main folks tracking book bans are PEN America. PEN, the first three letters of the word penis, is an American nonprofit that's led the fight for global free expression for more than 100 years in a truly legit way and in an on the right side of the Cold War way, and also not totally in a legit way for Gaza lately. It's complicated and important and not quite the topic this week. The point being that PEN America is the least worst option for exploring book bans, which is why we will be using them a lot today. So for example, from just 2023 to 2024, PEN found more than 10,000 instances of public school book bans in the United States. Some of that is overlap, so this came out to over 4,000 unique titles banned across 220 public school districts. But still, the United States, aka a freedom country, banned a book over 10,000 times in a school, aka a freedom factory, in just one academic year. While this problem was relatively specific to three very unsurprising states, Florida, Texas, and yes, Iowa, this is a widespread problem. Public school districts in 29 states, funded with the tax dollars from everybody in those states, banned a book due to complaints from a tiny fraction of taxpayers in those states. Often, bigots. Let's be clear, there's no two sides here. A small group of people, usually bigots, are dictating what kids can and cannot read in these states. Really. In a peer-reviewed study, a researcher at UC Boulder indexed US book bans from the years 2021 and 2022 and found a book was 5 times more likely to be banned if the author was not white. Meanwhile, the American Library Association's figures say 45.5% of all ban attempts against titles in the 2022 to 2023 school year targeted authors who identify as LGBTQ or books with subject matter suggesting that LGBTQ people exist. Recent bans overwhelmingly target authors who are not a straight white man. They often do this targeting without much attention to the actual content of the book. And of course, along with people of color and people of gay, queer, etc., straightforward historical fiction about the Holocaust gets banned all over modern America. Most notably and recently, there was Maus, a graphic novel by Art Spiegelman about exactly how awful the Holocaust was. Around the year 2022, districts in Missouri, Tennessee, Texas, and Iowa all banned Maus. The Missouri district also banned several ordinary works of nonfiction about the Holocaust, straight up history books, because they're bigots, you see. And bigots have a great talent for making their hate everyone else's problem, no matter how few of them there are. That's why they love book bans, which are extremely easy to push without needing a lot of support. Book banning is, for some bizarre reason, one of the few ways a single person can actually make a difference in this country. Or, let's not discriminate, $250,000. For example, in 2021, State Representative Matt Krause declared himself the one-man book police of Texas. Not book police in the fun way, like in Seinfeld, but rather in an all chapters are bastards way. Matt sent a letter to every public school in Texas demanding to know whether any titles on a list of 850 books might be on their shelves. For the record, Representative Krause is both allowed to do this and not in charge of doing this. He is just one of the 150 members of the lower house of a state legislature. Less than 1% of 1/2 of a state legislature. He's barely allowed to make you read an email he sends you. But with that one letter, Matt Krause rallied every crank and kook in cowboy land. The very next night, shouting wingnuts and wang dang doodles, brigade
I guess that makes sense. Is it scheduled in Australia as well? It's stupid. But based on that, like, I figured that would happen with any of your own stuff, just because they want to make sure it's regulated. And if you have visitors, they don't want them, taking your drugs or something.
A school librarian at a random board meeting in San Antonio. Within a week, staff members at that same school asked their librarians if they're
Hopefully your foot's doing good. I'm gonna go grab a little extension thing. I think I have it in the other room. I can still hear.
There's porn in the library because they heard that through the grapevine, entirely because one legislator acted like there might be evil books there, and hey, maybe porn is an evil book. Matt Krause vibed his way into disrupting statewide public and school library services single-handedly. It took 2 more years for that Texas lower house to pass an actual bill banning books, but by the time they got around to passing that law, it was sort of unnecessary. Local districts already yanked hundreds of books off shelves to meet local complaints or get ahead of the local complaints they predicted. And after the law passed, districts and legislators one-upped it. A private school in Houston canceled their Scholastic Book Fair just because that fair might sell the wrong book to somebody. Meanwhile, one Texas school board defined cartoon butts as acceptable content and cartoon frontal nudity as unacceptable, which is good to know. No hanging cartoon dong in Texas, but you know they got those cheeks. That town is called Katy, by the way. So she doesn't own a town, right? No. She does not own a town. Anyway, that Texas bill also requires booksellers to index and rate every book they sell based on sexual content, or else not be allowed to do business with schools at all. PEN America helped get that blocked in court, so that's something at least. Except, book publishers have very little patience for printing and shipping a bunch of books that any individual state legislator might pretend are pornos to pander to their base. These companies know the next ban is around the corner, so they play it safe. They print fewer copies of fewer titles. So even if a law gets reversed, there's no way to quickly undo the damage. And remember, this is all because Matt sent everyone a memo, and it's still going. On the heels of all those previous laws and bans and book fair cancellations, state lawmakers are now drafting a streamlined book ban system that can censor the entire state's library shelves in one go. Of course, Texas is not alone, despite what they claim. They say they're not alone. A similar back and forth wasted everyone's time in Iowa. Iowa's state government passed a book ban law that was so vaguely drafted, it left many schools confused whether any books were allowed anymore. Then a lawsuit blocked the law from taking effect. But then a follow-up appellate case reinstated the law less than a year later. And in those various stages of limbo, Iowa's librarians had to unshelve, reshelve, and re-unshelve all of their copies of more than 3,400 titles. See, it doesn't even matter if these bans stick or are legal. Simply causing the chaos is enough for these freaks. It's about destabilizing and punishing anyone who dares to promote progressive ideas. They're like if the Joker fought the concept of learning. I can't stress enough how this is just a handful of people making everyone suffer. In Florida, a state I pray doesn't have a town called like Warmboville or something, a school district in 2024 banned some of the works of Toni Morrison, Kurt Vonnegut, and Ayn Rand, as well as books like The Perks of Being a Wallflower and The Handmaid's Tale. Yes, I guess we're gonna defend Ayn Rand books as well. I don't like it any more than you do, but hey, that's books. Also banned were a graphic adaptation of Anne Frank's diary and Sophie's Choice, because if you pretend the Holocaust didn't exist, well, maybe it'll go away. But what's absolutely turd wild, or maybe you expect this already, is that at least half of these bans were spearheaded by just two people. One being a single guy with zero political power, who had only lived in Florida for a few years and has one teenage kid. This guy named Bruce Friedman, who apparently has multiple versions of that shirt, is telling every kid in Clay County, Florida, what they can and can't read. Bruce moved out of New York City after deciding its schools brainwashed his kid. I mean, so you gotta move, right?
Your effector isn't an issue, but anything heavy has to be. Huh. Okay. So, did you get a piece of wood in your foot and then you were hoping that like it would come out naturally or something after like 2 days, but then you noticed it was all infected, so you had to go to the hospital? Because it sounded like, because before you said something about having it for 2 days. Oh. I don't know what that is, but okay. I guess if it's not if it's not considered a controlled substance in the same way, but maybe it is still considered or something. I don't know. I mean, whatever, specific rules are specific rules.
What other choice do you have? Talking to your child? Letting them be their own person? Nice try, wokeism. Instead, Friedman relocated his tragically mind-virused family to Clay County, and then lodged hundreds of book ban attempts in his new location. Good job moving out of a place you hate to a new place you also hate, I guess. And so, along with just one other person, Bruce Friedman is personally waging this weird war on books. Florida's school administrators spent 10 to 15 hours per week just dealing with two cranks. Again, a few people get offended and everyone has to move the world for them. Over in another terrifyingly phallic state named Idaho, libraries are now having to create entirely new physical sections due to book complaints. That's thanks to a new law that requires them to have a special adult section for certain books. Yes, the same way video stores used to have those little porn areas. The library now has to ensure that minors don't step into this special area lest they get in trouble. Some places are having to put books behind the counter like they're cool cigarettes. What's more, if they fail to do this within 60 days, they have to pay the person who complained $250.
Wait, what?
For complaining about a book in a library. I need to stress this. That's not a fine that the library pays to the state. The library pays the complainer. That's a bounty any random Idahoan can bully out of their library if they catch them in a busy couple of months. Because while this is absurd in itself, a lot of libraries simply aren't big enough to do this. I mean, are there even big libraries in Idaho? Pop quiz. Name 2 large cities in Idaho. You lose if your response included second Boise. So if you're an understaffed small town library now required to add an adults only section, but can't afford to guard it or even build the extra area, what are you to do?
We decided to become an adult only library.
Tough call.
Yeah.
By Sherry Shalene.
Safely prepare ourselves to receive these fines.
That's in Donnelly, Idaho, a town with the kind of population you're imagining when you imagine Idaho town population, where the library's size is a grand total of 1,024 square feet. I mean, look at it. That's like the size of a Chipotle dining area. This makes it physically impossible for Donnelly's library to comply with the law, which makes it legally impossible to be a library for children. Children being like the main people who go to libraries. But now it's an adults-only library, I guess? A parent or guardian is required to give permission for their child to enter the Donnelly library. Why? Because Idaho legislators passed a law against Idaho-sized libraries, on top of offering a gig work version of Boba Fett bounties to anybody who finds a black or queer book in the digital catalog and times their complaint right. It's creepy, it's censorship, I don't like it, I think I might hate it. But hey now, Cody, hey, yo, Cody. There's also some good news here, because there are at least some states that realize how whack these bans are. Bogus, even. Last winter, the state of New Jersey passed a law banning book bans. You are banned, bans! They also protected librarians from facing civil...
It's just libraries in Idaho, and the libraries in Idaho are small because Idaho has some very small towns and small population overall.
...or criminal charges for the demonic act of putting a book on a library shelf. And this is just the latest, greatest example. The first state leading this charge was Illinois. In 2023, their Pritzker-pilled government passed a law that withdraws state funding from any library that bans a book for partisan or doctrinal reasons. This law inspired not just New Jersey, but Minnesota, Maryland, and Washington State. Washington State also took this in an interesting direction by focusing on a specific trend in recent book bans. Their law opposes book bans that target a protected class, such as people's race or sexual orientation. Because we need that, it seems. Other states are also on their way, like Massachusetts.
And I don't know when else you would have a banned book exist. Like, I just don't know. When is it not considered like what the terms they had, like the partisanship or whatever? Partisan or doctoral reasons, as it was.
Which is working on a law that, along with protecting librarians, which apparently we need to do, would incorporate the American Library Association's Bill of Rights. That ensures libraries would have access to books and no material be excluded. That law would also make a clear distinction about who picks books to go into circulation and lay out a process to object to certain books. And while we're talking about good news, it's worth noting that book bans make books objectively, scientifically, way cooler. Remember those weak-ass parental advisory stickers? Those sold millions of CDs back in the day, and those CDs weren't even banned. Bookstores do solid sales numbers during the annual Banned Book Week. The slew of American bans on Maus back in 2022 also made Maus one of 2022's best sellers. This kind of rebellious reading goes back many decades. When Australia banned the novel Portnoy's Complaint in the 1970s, underground bootlegs of the book became national icons and...
Wait, was that about Dave Portnoy's pizza stuff? His complaining about the one slice of pizza he tries?
Museum pieces. To be clear, book bans are terrible. This is not the best way to market books, let alone get books in kids' hands. Also, book bans can wreck the careers or emotional lives of the authors on the receiving end. But it's nice to know that they are ineffective at the very least, and no one should ever do one unless they're wieners. So hey, cool, there are
You never heard of it because it's banned.
heroes on both sides. And just like that Star War, there is so much more for us to cover. But first, enjoy some ads. Ads are not books. I promise, Texas will never ban our precious, precious ads. Unless one queer person holds up a can of Bud Light, probably. Boy, hope that doesn't happen. So we can get money. Will we get money? Let's see. Hi, news gobblers. Can I call you a news gobbler? You can't talk back, so it's sticking. It can be really tough to get all the facts these days. What with all the slap that.
Who's gonna say that?
We, as in you, have been watching me, as in royally, we, talk about all the book bans happening in the country. And before we step further into that abyss of turds and bigger turds, we should probably ask, what are the basics of a book ban? What are the steps of getting a book banned? We mentioned that Massachusetts is trying to create an actual framework around who picks books and how to object to those books. And that's because, at the moment, book banning is simpler than you'd think. In most states with book ban legislation, a parent of a student simply files a complaint. These complaint systems can be online or on paper. I'm sure J.K. Rowling uses a lot of owls to whine about trans people existing. She's got some real whimsical hate. In a lot of cases, you don't even have to be the parent of a child in that school district or even enrolled in public school, which is perhaps bad. After that, the process continues to vary. If the complaint goes to a school or a district, either the board members or a designated committee reviews the material. The material usually gets yoinked off.
He's a goofy guy. Probably not too much. Probably just shit that he just comes up with on the fly.
Off of shelves in the meantime, because books are guilty until proven innocent, not to mention judged by their covers. So sad. It should also be noted that some of these book bans are temporary or not literally bans. This is according to a very fair and balanced-ish study by the right-leaning Education Freedom Institute titled The Book Ban Mirage. Sounds very reasoned. But in this very clearly politically aligned study's defense, they are technically correct in that these banned books are sometimes still available. To quote the study, and I apologize for the length here, but I'm grateful we get to go full screen now, the advocacy organization PEN America is the primary...
I wonder if he's specifically referencing, because, like, again, as a production nerd, there are some incredibly long sections where Charlie, he looks like Charlie Day to me. Cody is on screen reading off his teleprompter and reading very well because he's able to mix up his eye line and his delivery speed and whatever. So he doesn't always look like he's reading off the prompter. It's difficult when you're doing that much reading of very, pithy lines, whatever. So it's still obvious you're doing a prompter, but there are, like, I don't know, 10, 15-minute sections where he's just doing a single take read of everything. And it's like, dang, you didn't fuck up one little word, dude. I can't read for shit, let alone on a teleprompter at a speed. Is like, dang, it's really, I mean, he might even have a prompter, runner. Like, instead of it just being like on a natural time, there could be a person running the prompter to make sure that it's mixing up with their pace. I think they have a team of people or whatever, so they might actually be the case. But still, it's like, dang, that's impressive.
Source for claims that there is widespread book banning underway in American schools. But PEN America's claims hinge on a definition of ban that most Americans would not recognize. In order to assess PEN America's claims by the common definition of banned, i.e. made unavailable, we reviewed the 2021 to 2022 Index of Banned Books against online school library card catalogs. We find that 74% of the books that PEN America lists as banned are listed as available in the same districts from which PEN America says those books were banned. So there you have it. Book bans never happened. Why are we even making this video? Ads? Or wait. Maybe. Let's keep reading into it. Books. Reading is good. See, this study's main point is two things. One, that books often banned are later unbanned. And two, that some of these books weren't literally banned, but rather restricted. The latter is a semantics game, obviously. It's like the lowest form of argument that ignores all context, and coincidentally, something conservatives love to use, as discussed in our semi-recent episode about some guy. But yeah, if a book is restricted, meaning that you have to get it special from behind a desk or an adult section of a library, it's not technically banned, but it's being made harder for kids to access freely and without having to go to an adult. So if a kid, for example, felt a tad bit gay but didn't want to tell everyone about it, they're probably way less comfortable finding literature if it means talking to their, perhaps, conservative and/or abusive parents. That's what this is about, making information and learning freely available for kids without permission. Allowing a kid to find a book while browsing and discover something about themselves or the world. And even when you temporarily ban a book, you are not only suppressing the sales of that book, but closing that window for kids. So yeah, this is all to say that this study about the book ban mirage is...
So like, it's just looking at like this section here, like he's definitely reading, right? He's reading, but he'll make facial expressions, squint his eyes, move his eyebrows up, move his head around so he's not just staring and reading his thing. He's reading his thing while he's making some faces, and then he even like looks down at the desk and back up, which is more natural.
So yeah, this is all to say that this study about the book ban mirage is in itself some kind of fake image. You
know, like, and then adding a little bit of, so you might not have a prompter though, so maybe it's just more about, that could be about memorizing the script, whatever. One of the things I see people do, unfortunately, sometimes is just have a monitor that they're reading a script from, but if you don't have a prompter to read it from, then it's super obvious that you're just reading off of a monitor nearby, and from afar it can seem like maybe your eyes are, but you can we're pretty good at noticing eye contact, so it's one of those things where it's pretty clear that you're not looking at the right thing. Jump cuts are your friend. Memorize 1 or 2 lines at each, and then read them, and then stop. Next line, 1 or 2 lines. Boom, 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 boom. Right. Some other tips for doing 1 or 2 readings. Oh, finding your place. Interesting. I would say it might be easier than you think, but maybe you've tried it before. It's a thing that you get better at for sure. Because like where the thing is. If you're doing a prompter for sure. And then those are more or less tips about how to be less robotic, right?
A fake image. What's the word? It's like if you were in the desert, you saw something that wasn't real.
Well, it doesn't matter if you're in front of the computer or not. If you have a prompter, it's just loaded into a script thing. Whether it's it's like a phone or in the bush. I mean, other than like it being bright outside and it's hard to read a screen, maybe, but like even Tug, when he does his videos, he's literally holding his script printed out, and then he reads a line, and then he delivers his line, and then there's a cut, and then he's able to read, and then go back to the next line, and then talk about his line. And when you have one or two sentences that you're saying at a time, you're able to add a little bit of pauses and ad lib and facial expressions and things. So, yeah, again, I'm not sure if you're using a prompter or not, or if you're talking about remembering your lines, which a prompter you wouldn't remember anything. You can also just have the lines on a phone that you read, and then put the phone back in your pocket, read those two lines, pull the phone back out, read the next two lines, put the phone back in your pocket. Like, if you don't want to have paper with you.
They named a desert-themed casino after it? Sure. Anyway, that's the nuts and oaths of book bans. But it's also worth talking about the history of them, because learning is, it says here, fun. That might be a typo. It's more that there's a certain pattern to book bans we need to point out. In some ways, book bans are pretty new, but in other ways, they are the opposite of new. In conclusion, America is a land of contrasts, etc. The US actually started banning books more than a century before there was a US. The first migrants from jolly old England sprinted off their sailboats in feverish search of books to ban, it seems. In that they banned Native American culture in the sense that they destroyed their oral history and art and customs and, people. Then they kept searching for bold new books to ban. Was a book being black in Jamestown, Virginia? Nah. Was a book being gay underneath Plymouth Rock? Nah. Although if it was, that's totally the book version of a power bottom. Instead, in the year 1650, there was a guy named William Pynchon who lived in the Massachusetts Bay Colony. He used a bird quill or block printer or whatever to write and publish The Meritorious Price of Our Redemption. This was a pamphlet about theology that basically said that anyone could get into heaven so long as they follow Christian teachings, which was apparently
I would say that sounds like just the Bible, doesn't it? They're like, okay, if you are a good Christian, then you'll get into heaven. What the fuck? Patooey, how dare you?
Marxist lib crap, because the colony's Puritan Calvinist majority thought God was a little more picky than that. Pynchon was called a heretic, and his pamphlet was banned and burned. This is considered the first book ban in what would become a United States. That pamphlet ban and pamphlet burning was cruel. It was also effective. Only 4 copies of that pamphlet survive today. You've never heard of William Pynchon unless you're a dweeb. His ideas died with his burned and banned pamphlet. And this sort of word lockdown continued and ramped up after we created a United States and a Constitution and a First Amendment. Oh, if you thought the First Amendment would have, prevented book bans, well, you are just adorable. Turns out, Americans canned most of the Constitution's rights and freedoms as soon as possible, starting with our second president. Of course, that choice to can human values before the 1700s even ended is less weird when you remember our first president. That guy was so bloodthirsty, the native Seneca people nicknamed him their language's word for town destroyer, like he's a fucking Thor villain. Also, don't try to paint a mural of our first president doing those crimes and other crimes, because a school board will order you to cover that mural up, even if none of the facts in the mural are inaccurate. Hoo boy, America. Moving on to the mid-1800s, and southern states banned everything from abolitionist handbills to the novel Uncle Tom's Cabin, I guess in hopes that they could keep plantation slavery going if nobody read criticisms of it. And if you live in a northern state, I need you to not get all smug about this. I know that's hard for you. But in 1873, the northern-dominated post-Civil War federal government passed a law called the Comstock Act, which stayed on the books for more than 60 years. The Comstock Act banned two things: mailing any obscene, lewd, or lascivious book, pamphlet, picture, paper, print, and any article or thing designed or intended for the prevention of conception or procuring of abortion. Ah, shucks. More like the Comstock Act. Ooh, yeah. Prevention of conception. Better not send any pictures of JD Vance, am I right? Zynga! Oh, that dude dries the canals faster than the Dust Bowl. Bakowza! But seriously, JD Vance's image makes your genitals ineffective, okay? He also would have loved this act, which included a ban on any information on how to get contraception or an abortion. That was the Comstock Act. Also, is the Comstock Act? Because when I said that JD would love this act, I wasn't speculating. He and his boss have considered and are considering bringing some version of this back. Cool. You see how the history of stuff kind of matters? You'd think 200-year-old laws shouldn't matter, but they do. After all, book bans have largely been enacted by bigots who think they can slow down progress by censoring any mention of it. In 1959, Alabama banned a book called The Rabbit's Wedding because one rabbit in it had white fur and the other rabbit in it had black fur. Now, okay, you might think that this is some elevated Jordan Peele-ass metaphor children's story about mixed race relationships, but I read it. For some reason, I read the book. It's just about rabbits. It's like 20 pages about rabbits. It's two rabbits getting married that happen to be different fur colors, and that terrified people. And sure enough, 8 years later, the Supreme Court would legalize heterosexual interracial marriages. The Rabbit's Wedding was inadvertently predicting the future, and the bigots subconsciously knew it and feared it. I'm guessing that most of us can't even imagine what it's like to be upset over interracial marriage or rabbits. But for Alabama State Senator E.O. Edens, this book was propaganda for integration and intermarriage and should be taken off the shelves and burned. Imagine that. Imagine someone being furious and wanting to burn a book about two bunnies wanting to have a bunny wedding. I mean, it's a sham wedding because animals have no souls, except my dog, but the gesture is nice. Also, souls don't exist. Or if they do, I don't know what this character thinks anymore about anything.
I mean, it's being made of a unique make-off trees and wood, being unique. That's what I was assuming. When you say you've been using a tablet, do you mean like sure, but when you say you've been using a tablet, is the tablet loaded into a teleprompter, like a glass at an angle to reflect onto the glass in front of a camera? Or you mean like you're just using a tablet that just has a camera on it for yourself, and then you can see yourself on like a front-facing camera that you can see yourself on the screen with? I mean, I'm not really sure any of the things that's in the production here whatsoever. Are you holding the tablet and just reading off it because it's big? I mean, I'm not really sure what. Because I know you're out in the wild, reading from a tablet at a distance. So is there just a tablet next to the camera that you just try to read off of? Interesting. If you're trying to do like a one-take wonder where like you read an entire big long section, memorizing could be difficult. But if you look off to the side to read the screen, I feel like it's gonna be pretty noticeable, but maybe that's just a thing that you're chill with, and it's okay for your first go at it. I feel like just memorizing one or two lines at a time, not like a big long line, but just individual sentence pairs or whatever, and just reading it off your phone or something. If you really don't want to have anything in your hand, or like I said, you could just have a script you hold in your hand if you don't mind that. I mean, lots of different ways to, especially if the logistics and practicality of you being able to read the stuff is tripping you up, then there's a few different compromises or solutions to the problem. Maybe you really hate jump cuts and you don't want yourself to be reading a sentence and then cut, reading a sentence, and then cut, reading a sentence. I don't know.
Point is, this is just one sad little dude trying desperately to paddle backward on the river of progress. And yet, not a single lesson would be learned from this. Sad little dudes continue to try and ban and control books as if that'll keep kids from being gay or trans or like aware of slavery or racism. We've done it for so long. Alabama schools forced their classes to use history textbooks that said good things about slavery well into the 1970s. In freaking 2018, 7 years ago, a group of San Antonio parents noticed their children doing homework that required them to make a balanced view of human slavery, literally making them list positive aspects of enslaving another race. And in 2012, a Georgia school gave out math homework with a word problem where you had to multiply how many beatings a slave got if you expand a beating rate of 2 beatings per day across a longer time frame. Oh God, that might be the most insidious one. It's just so casual. Like the slave beatings are just incidental units like eggs or pizza slices. Not to mention that it's being used for math, something that already sucks. Imagine taking racist math, slave whip algebra 101, calculating how the path of that lash could match a sine wave for a trigonometry demo. Sorry, bad tangent. So we're just making math jokes now? That's really who we want to be? Who even gave you a math book?
So like right here, I can't get it to seem natural doing that, or I end up going into wrong information. My brain works weird. That's a sentence. I can't seem natural doing that. That's a sentence, right? I can't seem natural doing that, or I end up doing wrong information. My brain just works weird. You can even end up paraphrasing the sentence if you're not able to memorize the entire thing. And then you can reread the sentence afterward. And if you think that, you know what, that has the wrong information, take 2, right? Now, it's not a live thing. And then the next sentence is the next thing. And then all of a sudden, you're just chewing through the script. Imagine the camera is your friend or your mother and just talk to them like you would talk to anybody else. That's another tip that's usually pretty good. We even use that one at HSN, basically. Is just like, it's your friend. Talk to your friend. Don't talk to it like it's a camera. Well, it's like, hi, how you doing? You know, you got to just be like, all right. Like, I even at one point took out I cut out a cutout of Chris Hemsworth's face and put a little hole in his eyeball. And put that over the front of a phone camera lens, so my friend could look over at Chris Hemsworth's face and just talk to him. Right? It was kind of goofy and silly, but too much paraphrasing and starting over. But it's just one sentence, one longer sentence. You'll get better at it. It's just like anything else. The more you do it, the more you really try at it. Well, I don't know what other solutions there could be, other than I guess you should give up. I mean, it's like you could buy a teleprompter, but then you're reading robotically as well, just like you are with the tablet already. You could even try the reading method and then try the memorizing it first before you say each sentence method. And then when you go to edit, you just kind of see which of the, when you're editing that section or whatever, you can just see which style ends up looking better in the final edit if you have both. Depends on how large the entire project is. And it sounds like you're already out there doing it, but now you're not happy with the results, or you stopped after starting for a little bit. I'm not really sure. Like, a lot of details left out. But every larger thing, like even a paragraph, is made up of sentences. So you don't have to memorize the entire paragraph. You can just do one sentence at a time. I don't see why. Maybe, again, like maybe you just don't want jump cuts. I feel like people appreciate jump cuts because it's respecting the time of the viewer. Because, like, when I guess that's more, it's a bit more when I'm editing like VODs of people, because there's some dead air, or they're like getting their thoughts and they repeat a sentence. They say something and then they say something and they say it better the second time, right? Well, if you're doing long run-on sentences, then I'm sure you can find a place or two where maybe appear to be fine, if you're really worried about that. I mean, even one long, commaed out sentence should be okay. I guess I'm being pretty critical just because it's a bit more in my field of expertise. This must be how people who know shit act so confident in what they do. Because usually I'm so fish out of water, and I'm so like, hey, I'm just learning, right? And I'm so like amicable, and I feel like I'm being more of a tyrant in this. Interesting.
Monkey anyway. My point here is that historically, book bans have always been silly and sad and embarrassing. Basically, any book where human beings show empathy has been threatened. Huckleberry Finn, The Catcher in the Rye, To Kill a Mockingbird, and The Canterbury Tales.
Wait, wasn't Huckleberry Finn usually banned because it has the N-word in it? Or is there actually like people who are upset, even N-word enjoyers are now upset that there's too much kindness in the book?
Yes, The Canterbury Tales. Apparently, a set of pranks and fart jokes among Catholic monks really freaked people out. We should, of course, mention the 1950s, when the Red Scare's right-wing authoritarians targeted anything that felt Marxist to them. McCarthyites also attempted a more fundamental reshaping of American education by going after civics textbooks and history textbooks. They accused those textbooks of devious crimes, like acknowledging that Franklin Delano Roosevelt existed and had been president recently, for more terms than anybody else in history. McCarthyites also accused textbooks of being a Stalinist plot to unite the world under one globalist government if they mentioned that the United Nations just got founded. Again, embarrassing. Always embarrassing. That's kind of the point here. Nobody has looked back and said, "Ooh, I'm so glad that book was banned." There are no book banning heroes, especially not now. While modern book bans share most of the same weenie shit we just talked about, they are a tad different. For starters, today's book banners have a fixation on targeting new stuff. What I mean is that book bans of the past often targeted older books, even for that time. But almost every modern book ban demonizes a contemporary book. Don't get me wrong, they still play the hits. Toni Morrison continues to do Hall of Fame ban numbers for her 1970s thought crime. Mark Twain's The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn enjoys a special status as a target because it both prints the N-word a lot and criticizes the beliefs of people who wish they were allowed to say that word. But beyond those outliers, modern book banners only want to crush new books. According to PEN America, in the 2021 to 2022 school year, 7 of the top 10 most banned books in America were published in 2015 or later. And out of more than 1,000 books banned that year, almost half of them were young adult fiction. This is far more insidious for one very simple reason. These are the books that kids actually want to read. Like Catcher in the Rye, who gives a shit? What is that even about? Baseball? Bread? Shooting a guy? But by going after modern fiction, these adults are cutting kids off from the new culture they most likely want to be a part of, because those adults don't have any better culture to offer instead. It's indoctrination, very clear and simple. It's also especially harmful to kids without the socioeconomic wealth to buy those fun new books. Another way book bans are different now is that technology makes it way more efficient to do. We mentioned almost all of Florida's book bans come from 2 people, one being New York's least favorite son, Bruce Friedman. The other Florida book ban all-star is an Escambia County school teacher named Vicky Baguette, who apparently uses her downtime to scour libraries for sexy passages she can read to school boards.
Let's talk about some new porn books that I can still find so easily. Once and Future at West Florida High. Gwen was naked, chest heaving, curling fingers into Ari's hair while her legs trembled, and that's pubic hair, by the way.
Oh, cool. Thanks for clearing up that hair thing. Vicky Baguette, or Baggett, I don't know, I don't care, has tremendous concern about the contents of Florida's books.
Gotcha.
And in all 178 of her complaints has stated that she read each book in its entirety. And yet, this astute literary critic was literally just copy-pasting her concerns from a website called BookLooks. A book banner who doesn't like to write their own thoughts? Who would have thought it? If you're wondering, BookLooks has no content beyond flagging titles for objectionable content, including profanity, nudity, and sexual content. They're nothing but a literary hall monitor and the perfect resource for anyone who wants to ban books and doesn't read. And this is how a few people can bang out all these bans, not because they are passionate readers, but ideological trolls. As writer Tom Lay observed for Defector.com in 2025, our nation's cranks used to have to do a lot of labor, printing physical leaflets, calling landline phones, mailing things through the US mail with stamps that probably have black people or queer people or manatees or some other woke group on them. I mentioned manatee stamps because you will love using them or receiving them. But these days, you don't need to do any of that. You can just sit in the bath, thumbing on your phone, running your thumbs through your phone's hair, pubic hair. And so we're past the point where it's 100% necessary for an astroturfed right-wing billionaire to drive something like book bans. The book ban germ has gone airborne. Don't get me wrong, that's in part because of larger groups making that happen. Like, it should be noted that BookLooks is shutting down. And according to the site, that's because, quote, God called us to this work in 2022, but after much prayer and reflection, it has become apparent that his work for us here is complete and that he has other callings for us. God. Famous hater of books. Of course, when they say God has other callings for them, I'm pretty sure they actually mean conservative dark money, because it turns out that BookLooks was founded by a member of Moms for Liberty named Emily Makish. You know Moms for Liberty, right? We've certainly talked about them enough. Short explanation is that they are not really for liberty, nor are they a small group of moms so much as a Heritage Foundation-funded political tool. Emily Makish claims that Moms for Liberty has nothing to do with booklooks.org. It's just, I guess, incidental to those other enthusiastic, coordinated anti-democratic book bans led by that group. Moms for Liberty bans so many books in so many districts. They're now banning new books about the topic of book bans in clear retaliation against people who've done journalism against book bans. Moms for Liberty, folks, who helped Bruce Friedman ban the illustrated version of The Diary of Anne Frank from his local Florida schools, and coincidentally, sent out a newsletter titled with the quote, "He alone who owns the youth gains the future." That is,
for me, that's a weird
a
timing.
Hitler quote. They quoted Hitler in an aspirational way. And I'm not sure why I do this, but putting aside the Hitler of that quote, it's still very telling. They are stating very clearly that they are trying to own the youth in order to manipulate the future. This is not, as they love to pretend to be, a handful of concerned parents. This is a funded and coordinated political movement of indoctrination. This is why a lot of America's local and state book bans are carbon copies of each other. Remember those Pen America stats from the beginning of the episode? Many of the book bans Penn totaled up in 2023 and 2024 were bans of the same books in new places. Book banners aren't avid readers. They're not banning from a place of fandom. They're hopping on the suburban mom version of 8chan, run by Republican operatives, to find the next title somebody's passing around for banning. It's so clearly not about the books themselves, but rather a broad push against the libs. Remember Matt Krause? That Texas legislator who asked every library in Texas if they circulate any of his least favorite 850 books? It should be noted that he didn't explain why he picked those books. And in fact, he and his aides have refused any opportunity to talk about it. Do you think he read all those books? There's actually a very telling detail in his list, which is mostly made up of left-leaning or diverse authors or ideas. You know, a book that opposes book burning by an author who happened to be gay, or a book that describes the history and origins of quinceañeras by a scholar who happens to be Mexican and Jewish. But there's one thrilling exception. A book titled Cynical Theories: How Activist Scholarship Made Everything About Race, Gender, and Identity, and Why This Harms Everybody. That book is actually a right-wing critique of leftist language. You might recognize one of the embarrassing authors, James Lindsay. Because this book critiques leftist language, that means it also uses a lot of lefty words as an example. And so Matt Krause wants to ban it. So it sure looks like this Texas legislator, or whichever billionaire's employees wrote his list for him, compiled it by doing a Control-F search for any words they didn't like, and this one got flagged with all the rest. That's it. You might recognize this as the Doge method, or the Trump method, whichever you prefer. They don't read books. Of course they don't. They don't care about their context. They are just trying to erase words they think are dangerous to their political goals. It's so sad and obvious, and luckily doesn't appear to be working as well as they'd like it to. That said, it is working enough to suck. And so, after the break, we're going to talk more about that. But first, ads, capitalism, Rick Cop, Tamagotchi, of today's hour. Welcome back to all, even the leftist scum who hate America. We were talking about the history of losers trying to ban books and how it's exactly like the losers still trying to ban books, with the exception of today's losers being part of a concerned and ideological effort made possible by the magic of the World Wide Web. And while so far book bans in America have often been reversed and don't seem particularly effective at holding back progress, they certainly aren't harmless. At best, they are a waste of everyone's time and money, more than you might realize. In Texas alone, recent legal challenges to 1,470 books were projected to cost taxpayers at least $3.6 million in book cop costs and administrative time suck. Florida school districts spend roughly one staff salary worth of money every year to comply with book ban laws. But at worst, these bans are directly hurting kids and libraries, even before there is a ban. Book bans hurt libraries just by existing. As we mentioned before, there are tons of examples of libraries yoinking books off their shelves ahead of possible bans, just to try to survive as a library and institution and source of local jobs. Before Texas legislator Matt Krause got any actual laws passed, a San Antonio school district ordered the removal of 400 books from their shelves. They self-censored and pre-complied in hopes of protecting their funding and their time from their state's predatory government. How's that for a Mirage Education Freedom Institute? Mirage! It's Mirage. I knew I would remember, and I finally did. It's Mirage. That's the word. I digress. Remember, in at least one state, they put bounties on libraries that anyone can collect. There is a fear in the air. Libraries are already having to deal with Doge-brained dildos who think every public service needs to make a profit. They certainly don't need the added stress. So Texas administrators are trying to stop the bleeding by taking Dr. Seuss and Judy Blume off shelves before anyone forces them, which they eventually did anyway, of course. Pre-removing books, by the way, artificially deflates the statistics on how many books America bans. You gotta wait until you're forced. You gotta get those Seuss numbers up. Librarians in many other states are self-banning in another way by adding potentially bannable books to their usual process for culling old and worn-out books. In regular times, in a good society, libraries actually destroy lots of books. Library books physically wear out after all. They get smelly or get moldy. Pages get torn out to make blunts. Other books get weeded out, pun intended, for being an obsolete edition. All of that's good. It's good practice to pulp or even gulp burn those books. But a lot of librarians are starting to sneak books like And Tango Makes Three into their pile of weeded and culled books. Even though that gay penguin book is so new, you might remember it being in the news because people got mad about it. Oh hey, kind of reminds you of that interracial rabbit book, doesn't it? In that a bunch of people freaked out about natural social progress as told via cute animals, even though the bunny one wasn't even about it, but this penguin one is. But again, animals don't have souls, all right? I want to make that clear. But also their souls aren't real. Again, I'm confused about this character. But the point is, that book is the only one we know about because of a lawsuit. There are no doubt scores of libraries quietly self-banning books by using this loophole. And while that does seem cowardly and shitty to do, for some librarians, this is simply an act of self-preservation.
Parents and educators packed into the theater of the North Hunterdon and Voorhees Regional High School for the latest school board meeting and hurled harsh words at administrators and librarians over a handful of books on library shelves.
Police escorted him outside. Moments later, he left quietly. The controversy over embattled school librarian Martha Hickson and her refusal to yank illustrated sex ed books like Let's Talk About It off the shelves highlighted a deep divide.
Yep, nothing more American than a violent dude wearing a Punisher skull while shaking hands with the cops after threatening a sweet old librarian lady for trying to provide kids sex education. So, one of the other consequences to book bans is that a lot of librarians are getting called pedophiles for putting books.
Check that dude's computer. Don will say.
On shelves and wearing cardigans and otherwise doing their jobs. You call someone a pedophile for being a decades-long best friend of a convicted pedophile and sex trafficker who was sent a weird pedophile birthday card from the person you're calling a pedophile, not for cardigans. And man, it's just so sad. Imagine
they get told by bullshit right-wing outlets, weird websites, again, scanning the public information that exists in public libraries. Then there's also that too, yeah.
Imagine furiously raging at a fucking librarian. What kind of upbringing and ideology leads someone to that? This is all sad. No other word. These people are sad. There's no nice way to say this, but assuming they aren't just racists or political operatives, the people pushing for book bans are ultimately just people who don't understand books or nuance or context or learning. There's a general anti-intellectualism and anti-art movement in this country, and it's being led by people who simply feel challenged by complex ideas and lack the humility to just shut the f*** up. Going back to Bruce Friedman and his efforts to ban the illustrated diary of Anne Frank, his reasoning was, of course, because there was gay stuff in that book. He went out and said in public, quote, "The fact that little Anne Frank once had some lesbian thoughts that made their way into her diary, does that help a kid learn the horrors of Holocaust or inhumanity? No. So what is it helping the kid learn? As far as I'm concerned, it's grooming."
It's a kid being a kid. I forgot about that part of the Anne Frank diary, but I think we read it at some point. So yeah, I forgot about that. And that was kind of an interesting thing.
To be fair to this wiener, He only wanted to ban the illustrated version of the diary. Friedman even went on to tell that reporter that he actually loves the book itself and was moved by the Diary of Anne Frank when he first read it as a 9-year-old. But then he says his big takeaway from it is that our cruelty to each other comes from, quote, not just the Nazis, it's the human condition. Oh, so like, I don't want to be mean, but I think Bruce Friedman is just a stupid guy. Like, put nicely, a dumb f***.
It's like, oh yeah, I don't blame the Nazis. It's just humans being humans. It's just the way it is because I hate people and I'm not a Nazi. Therefore, it's just the way humans are.
He apparently read The Diary of Anne Frank, a book about only one child getting hunted and killed by only the Nazis, and no other characters except for some non-Nazis who protected Anne from Nazis as best they could. And the moral he took from it was not just Nazis are bad, and he wants to ban a version of it because he thinks that the fact that Anne Frank was slightly bi-curious isn't relevant to the story about the Nazis, who specifically hated and slaughtered people for being gay, and therefore any images of that should be banned. I know hypocrisy is dead. 6 feet under. But it's incredible when you remember all the right-wing accusations of nanny state liberals policing words and giving out participation trophies and being overly inclusive. And then one empty trash bag stands up and declares that a book should be banned for everyone because it made him scared and confused. And yet, conservatives want to go off on trigger warnings. You know what trigger warnings don't do? They don't ban the content. Trigger warnings are not bans. They're pretty much just information. Banning books is more like a trigger surrender. Point is, these are just incurious, angry people. But because they are all so fucking loud about their ignorance, we apparently need to listen to and accommodate them. That's the thing. Beyond all the legal steps and school meetings and tedious paperwork, book banners share a common trait of never shutting the fuck up. Everybody banning books perceives themselves to be free speech warriors because they think free speech means forcing your speech on other people at all times. Ironically, the book banners are louder and stubborner than every author they're banning. If a district says Anne Frank matters for her Holocaust insights, a book banner turns around and says the problem is the lesbian stuff. If the school says one lesbian-ish thought isn't a thought crime, a book banner says the librarians are pedophiles. If the librarians aren't pedophiles, the book banner keeps saying it until the librarians quit their jobs in fear and the police have to restrain school board meeting attendees before shaking their hands in the hallway. There is a way to combat this, but unfortunately it requires work. I hate to sound like a bumper sticker here, but ignorance is contagious. These people are essentially pushing their ignorance on others by forcing libraries and schools to make kids as ignorant as they are. It's a cycle. Someone grows up with a textbook that says Jesus used dinosaurs to free the slaves, but the slaves were like, no thanks. And then that person demands that those textbooks stay in circulation. So the goal here is to stop the spread like any contagion. We gotta Larry Fishburne this, baby! We need to push elected school board members and professional educators to update our curriculum. And the #1 way to do that is to relocate the power back to those people, and not some asshole from New York City who thinks his new Florida county, named for a slave owner by the way, is getting turned lesbian by libraries. So, hey, you. Yes, you, with the hat. Hey, have you ever thought about running for school board? Creepy cranks sure have, but also no one likes creepy cranks. So if you or someone you know runs against a creep crank, you might win, and then you can help improve the required books. For more than a decade, until around 2018, Texas classrooms used a normal-sounding history book called Prentice Hall Classics, A History of the United States. That book included this paragraph, quote, "While there were cruel masters who maimed or even killed their slaves, although killing and maiming were against the law in every state, there were also kind and generous owners. The institution was as complex as the people involved. Though most slaves were whipped at some point in their lives, a few never felt the lash. Nor did all slaves work in the fields. Some were house servants or skilled artisans. Many may not have even been terribly unhappy with their lot, for they knew no other. Oh, neat. Wait a both sides of slavery school history book. See. Okay, so see.
It's in 2007,
some slaves maybe weren't terribly unhappy because they didn't know what it was like to not be a slave. Heck, you know what? Some slaves might have been merely pretty unhappy. That book never should have been in a classroom. And now it's not. The publishing company no longer prints it and actually uses that passage I quoted as an internal example of how not to cover slavery in future books. That, sadly, is a win. Your state and your district could do that same good thing for yourselves if necessary, because there's a lot more work to be done. For example, as of 2014, there were 14 US states spending tax dollars to teach creationist curriculum. That is the actual problem, not fucking gay penguin adoption. Let the gay penguins have a kid. It's fine. Another word for gay is happy. It's just happy feet. Calm the fuck down. But if you can't run for school board because you're lazy or have a bunch of priors, there is one other big thing we can all do.
I'm one of those.
We really need to normalize allowing experts and professionals and artists to do their jobs. Even before Trump, there's this weird growing push, perhaps related to the internet, where ignorant people seem to think that they should get a say in stuff they know nothing about. I know this sounds kind of mean, but I think it's important that we mock those people. I think it's important that ignorance is once again shameful so that those people might finally shut the fuck up and go read a book. This mockery can come in many, many fun ways. Back in 2011, for example, a publishing company released a censored version of Huckleberry Finn, replacing the N-word with slave. In response, a group of people created a robot edition of the book, as in replacing the black character Jim with a literal robot, in order to mock the idea of watering down the racism depicted in that story. Or more recently, down in Florida, this happened.
Movies like a film highlighting Ruby Bridges integrating schools and books like this one centering a same-sex penguin couple have come under scrutiny over the past few years after being flagged for being potentially inappropriate content. But now some Floridians have filed complaints that the Bible is full of inappropriate content.
That Bible ban is being supported by at least one pastor. The point obviously not being that the Bible is bad, but rather that book bans are. Old Ronnie DeSantis called this performative and fraudulent, without seeing the obvious irony that all book bans are those things.
Yeah.
But it's a start, because as I keep saying, book bans are stupid weenie shit. That's why we shouldn't do them, for any reason. Like, there are a bajillion different conservative books published every year, often by large publishing houses who only print that viewpoint. There's no need to ban those books and make them seem cool or dangerous. We don't have to do it back to them. We can just mock them. And
oh man, Kara and I were in a Barnes and Noble the other day, and then there was a book on the shelf, and I saw it from afar, and I walked over, and it's a biography of Shane Dawson by Shane Dawson from 2015. And I was like, oh my God, they are really trying to get rid of these books. The book title was like, It Gets Worse, or something like that. And I was just like, is this about his life or about his career? Like, no, this is just him covering things and saying, oh, it gets so much worse because we're drama, right? And then it's like, well, you got some drama, and now your book's not moving. It's sitting on this shelf for 10 years. That's
support the books they are so scared of. Make it cool for kids to ignore book bans, which it already is. The writer of this episode co-hosted an entire podcast about the author Kurt Vonnegut. Like and subscribe. It's called Vonneguys, amazing title for a fantastic author. And that writer of this episode discovered Vonnegut in high school, specifically because one Vonnegut book was on a list of banned and otherwise interesting books. He read a Vonnegut novel called Cat's Cradle, which is a worthwhile book about the apocalypse and humanity and admittedly some foot stuff. An Ohio school district banned the novel Cat's Cradle for some of those reasons back in 1972. There were also many bans thrown at Vonnegut's novel Slaughterhouse-Five. There was even an incident when a North Dakota school superintendent seized and burned dozens of copies of Vonnegut's work. That's a tragedy, but that's also notoriety and a powerful signal that those books contain something opposed by troglodytes. Without that infamy, this episode's writer might never have found his favorite writer. He's one of millions of kids who followed a book ban to intellectual freedom. Because book bans are for babies. They're for parents, billionaires, and random freaks who can't understand that a child can process an idea. Bans are the coward's way out. They're loser shit. They're an attempt to erase history in order to forget it ever happened or might apply to today. Oh my gosh, what if history applied to today? Book banners think you can fix the Holocaust by playing peekaboo with its memory. And of all the problems in America, book bans might be the one we're most able to solve with optimism and warmth and choosing to not be an asshole unless you're mocking idiots. You know. Also, unless you want me to be an asshole, I can do that. I can be a complete piece of shit. I'll do it. Okay. Do you want me to do that? You want me to do that? Huh? Jeff Probst? Surprise, by the way. This is the entire video, this entire time. I'm so sorry. It's actually been an audition video for the CBS television show Survivor. I can be whichever personality you want, Jeff. I'll be a Puck. He's not from Survivor, but he was a famous asshole on a reality show. I'll be another person or another type of character. I don't really watch reality TV, but I want to be on it so bad. Whichever personality wins me the grand prize that is still $1 million, even though that's barely money now, Jeff. It's not the year 2000 anymore, Jeff. Our money inflated into near worthlessness, and iPhones exist, and you no longer have this face. Hell, I no longer have this face. I just need to win that $1 million, okay? Please, I just want to own a home before I die. Jeff, please. Jeff, please. Put me on your torment island, Jeff. I'll bring my own torch. Jeff!
One day, Cody, one day. Just get hit by a truck.
I shouldn't have agreed to bring my own torch. I didn't know I was going to say that. It's fine, I'll bring my own torch. Ow. Ow! 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 Do you think I'd be good on Survivor?
He was getting too many good flames.
Good on Survivor. Ow! Just give me $1 million. Hey, everybody.
Weird that I'm feeling tired. Perhaps we should play something fun. So wake me up. Wake up. Wake up. Here we go. There we go. A nice little animal video. Everyone loves animals. What? I didn't push it hard enough. I think it's probably because I worked out for the first time in a long time. So my body is like, whoa, whoa, whoa. We had different amounts of energy. Hold on, buddy. So.
Sponsored by Curiosity Stream. This right here is the common hippopotamus, Hippopotamus amphibius. Now, for a long time, it was assumed that the hippopotamus was related to the pig. I mean, just look at it. But recently, they figured out that their closest relatives are the cetaceans, the friggin' whales and dolphins. Not the manatee. No, that would have made too much sense. I mean, a manatee looks like you made a hippo at Build-A-Bear, but came up short on stuffing. No, the manatee is related to the elephant, while the hippo is a whale that wasn't. Anyway, the ancestors of the hippos didn't join the ancestors of the whales in the ocean. I have a guess why. They didn't know how to swim, so they stayed in the kiddie pool. And you know what? 54 million years later, they still don't know how to friggin' swim. They really don't. They fake it. They bounce along the bottom. And it's kind of cute. Look, they tuck in their little wrist angle things like a bunny rabbit. I mean, for not knowing how to swim, they're quite graceful. In part, it's because they're sort of a perfect mixture of heavy and buoyant. They're heavy because they have these ultra-dense bones. And that's good because without them, they'd have some buoyancy stability problems. What with all that fat and those big lungs, they'd roll around like a meat beach ball down there. But as it is, it's almost perfect, like they're walking on the moon. But the hippo isn't fully aquatic, it's semi-aquatic, which means it does it half-ass, literally. Their face took a page from the crocodile and sort of rotated their eyes and nose up to the top. And this allows the hippo to hang out in the water, looking like a creepy old man in a public pool. Now, being semi-aquatic, all this equipment has to work above and below. And I'll tell you, you don't want to play Guess That Orifice with a hippo. Here, look at this one. You guess, and then I'll show you what happens when it opens up. Oh, look, it's just an eye. Under the water, they can keep their peepers open because they're protected by a transparent membrane. Their nostrils look a bit like two hairy mud slugs singing opera. I know what you're thinking. That's a hole you could lose a fist in. How'd they keep the water out? Well, the trick is, when they're relaxed, they're closed. This is similar to the dolphin's blowhole, which is just a pair of nostrils that joined up and went to the top. So every time they want to take a breath, they have to flare their nostrils. Is it just me, or does that look like an evil Muppet? The good thing is, it helps keep the water out. Sure, once in a while you have to clear out the pipes, but these remarkable nostrils allow the hippo to do something else. They can take their nap time under the water. Look at that, that's how you nap. They have a reflex which allows them to raise their head and take breaths, all without waking up. Now their ears do this little thing. I like to pretend that they're tiny wings. And sometimes it's this little twirly motion. But this is something they do to get the water out their ears when they come up. And you gotta keep those clear because there's a lot to listen for. And it's not just the sounds they make out of the water. A team of science hippies threw some carrots into murky water and then listened as a science hippo tried to find them. The hippo made a series of clicks under the water. Sounded like this. I know what you're thinking. That's a fart. They recorded a hippo fart. And that would be embarrassing, but no, I think they ruled that out. But hippos seem to use clicks to echolocate like the dolphin do. And they sound like farts. Science. If the hippo is semi-aquatic, that means that it is also semi-land dick. Jerry, that's not a word. No, it isn't land dick. It's not aqua dick, Jerry. It's aquatic. Whatever. Hippos spend time on land. Idiot. Now, you'd think that they'd live in a place that was wet out of the water, like Seattle or London. But no, they live in hot as shit places. And that can be problematic in a couple of ways. First of all, the pools dry out. And then what are you? Semi-mud dick. Jerry, I did that for you. But secondly, in the heat, you have to keep that giant meat potato from overheating. They don't have sweat glands, but they do look a bit sweaty, don't they? That's because their skin secretes a mucus. The mucus has a reddish pigment in it called hipposudoric acid, which turns brown as it dries out. This compound acts as a sunscreen, but also can fight infection from microorganisms. And it's another reason why you don't want to ride a hippo naked. Curiosity Stream is pretty amazing. I should know.
That sounds like sweating, but just with better
I
sweat.
think you should be one too. Listen, after all that shorty get your head right again. Bet you didn't even do your Diet Coke and live in those lava lamps. Curiosity content, because that's how old I am. And that makes a great deal even better. Try it today. I'm a fan and happy to have them as a sign up.
You say he's 23?
Use Stream.com/ZayFrank23, because that's how old I am. Use code ZayFrank23 to get 25% off when you sign up. And that makes a great deal even better. Try it today. I'm a fan and happy to have them as a sponsor. Where were we? Oh, right. For the most part, hippos eat grasses and shrubbery, mostly at night, but that footage sucks. They sort of use their lips to get at it. All that hardware up front is for fighting, not eating. To chew, they gotta take it all the way back to where the little teeth are. These grasses aren't that nutritious and they're hard to digest. So bacteria in the hippo's stomach ferment and break down those lawn clippings into something that the hippo can work with. After all that's been taken care of course it comes out the other end. Spectacularly. The hippo is not a modest pooper. Not like a dog sort of looking around guiltily. It looks like a malfunctioning Toto toilet. The bidet nozzle's on full blast. The thought is this is for scent marking because it helps disperse the scent. Understatement. But here's the thing. 16 hours a day or so, they're sitting in a pool with a whole bunch of other hippos. You're shifting around a bit. You don't always know what part of the hippo in front of you you're facing. And at some point, someone's going to have to go, and it's a pain in the ass to get out and get your flip-flops, because the floor in the pool house toilet is always wet and you don't know from what. So if someone shits in the pool, you could make a big deal out of it, or you could lean into it. And that's what the hippos did. Make some lemonade out of those lemons. And by lemonade, I mean shit soup. And by shit soup, I mean soup with benefits. All right, that sounds weird. With all the hippos pooping in the pool, that's good news for all the things that like to eat poop. But as those creatures thrive, they take oxygen out of the water. And this in turn makes the water resemble the insides of the hippo's gut. And that means that those healthy bacteria that are living in the gut can come out and play. And suddenly the water is like a big shared gut. Everyone's pooping in it and drinking it, and the fish are eating it. I mean, it's good bacteria for everyone. It's like swimming in kombucha. Or kombucha. Get it? Kill me. And this can change entire ecosystems. The grasses hippos eat are rich in silica. The silica gets used by diatoms, a kind of algae that encases itself in little glass houses. The diatoms can then outcompete green algae, which is good because green algae blooms can choke out all the sunlight in a body of water. You want a nice healthy lake? Have a hippo in it. Who knew? But don't start thinking that hippos are just a group of mellow environmentalist river-pooping hippies. They've got some spunk to... We don't use that word, Jerry. They've got some attitude. I mean, look at this one. It's chasing a freaking boat. They can gallop underwater. And look, it's got a bigger wake than the boat. I mean, they're not bad on land either. Those dense bones they have can support all that weight even in a sprint. And in short stretches, they can go 30 miles an hour. I mean, look at that thing. Coming at you, it's a guaranteed pant load. Now, being a mucus-covered giant bulldozer gives you some protection, but they also have a weaponized face. You know when somebody yawns and then, like, you have to yawn? Imagine what it's like for the hippos, because their yawn goes on for days. This mouth-wide-open gesture exposes their canine teeth, which can be over 2 feet long. They never stop growing, and they self-sharpen by rubbing against each other. I mean, you put all that together, and you have a creature that really doesn't give a f***. Look at this one. You know what he's doing? Wait for it. He's f***ing with a rhino. And the rhino doesn't know what the hell's going on. He's like, you sure about this, bro? And the hippo keeps at it until it does what you're not supposed to do, which is turn your backside to a pissed-off rhino. Look at that, right in the noodle. However, most of the hippo's profound toothidity is...
I would feel like a rhino would be pretty good against the hippo just because it's got thicker skin and a very defensive horn. Like, no matter what the tusks are, you're not going to be able to approach without getting skewered by that horn.
Reserved for other hippos. A single alpha male has the exclusive right to mate with all the females in the pod. Younger
I know hippos are like the most dangerous, fucking killing, aggressive, all this other bullshit, but I just feel like with a rhino there is just it's not going to be able to do anything.
Periphery and take out their sexual frustration on each other. Now, if you're having trouble figuring out who's who, you're not alone. It turns out it's not that easy to tell the hippopotamuses from the hippopotamisters. Come on, that's amazing. Well, in this shot, you can probably tell. This is essentially what hippo pornography looks like. It's why you don't see very much of it on your websites. I mean, you might get a shot of a nostril here or there, but it's sort of boring. But I suppose don't judge until you've had a hippopotamus on top of yours. It's so bad. Anyway, that's how they do it, and you know what happens next. This right here is a mummy hippo in the process of giving birth to a brand new baby. Birth usually happens under the water, and the baby needs to learn quick how to come up for air. It's not all that strong yet, and it's still learning to hold its breath. So for the time being, Mummy helps out with a nudge before it sinks back down like a flesh rock. Soon enough, though, it gets the hang of it. For the first months, the mummy hippo will raise the baby away from the pod, for reasons that will be painfully obvious. But for now, this is about as sweet as a hippo relationship gets. I mean, come on, those babies are cute. And look at pygmy hippo babies. I mean, that's off the charts. It's like a gummy bear come to life. But parenting out there isn't all that easy. Nope, honey, that's a crocodile. Hot. Oh, for God's sakes. At this size, the babies are still vulnerable to predators that wouldn't take on a full-grown hippo. So it's helpful to have a full-grown hippo around. Look at the antelope watching the whole thing. Like wildlife rubbernecking. It's like, suck it, leopard. Yeah, suck. Oh, they're leaving. It's a bit of an incredible adventure. Out there alone with your mother, learning how best to hippopotame. And after surviving leopards and lions and crocodiles, it's time for them to go back and re-enter the pod, which is perhaps more dangerous than all of what they've been through. Now, let's just say that our little friend made it back just fine. But to understand the hippopotamus, you should know that many don't. If a new male has taken over the pod, it will often kill returning pups. It's a sad thing, but a true thing. And that's the thing with these hippos. They alternate between this sort of serene calm and sudden moments of extreme violence. But that sort of unpredictability might be the best way to stay alive. And they have stayed alive, big buckets of flesh among lions and leopards. And that is just how the hippo do.
Get caught. Oh, get caught. Oh, God. Oh. Ooh. Close one there, kitty. Belly. That's a belly. Oh my
No,
God,
Jerry,
dude.
they're not using farts to echolocate. How do I know? For one, what are they going to do? Have a bean burrito 3 hours before they want to find a carrot? They can't just fart on command, Jerry. And anyway, they know it wasn't a fart. Well, I don't know. They looked for bubbles, Jerry. Do your magic sonar farts not make bubbles? No.
Yeah, it's
No,
just
you cannot
so.
use my bathtub.
You know,
Idiot.
just these big baby things. These big, soft, sweet little babies getting munched up by another big, soft potato. I mean, it is. I mean, I don't know. I knew what I was expecting, but it's just something about even seeing it blurred out. I was just like, "Ah!" You know. Brutal. Ooh. Damn. Okay. Mix up my position a bit, maybe. Oh, yeah, I'm feeling that. I always forget how much the deadlifts hit the ass. Like, I used to only really use my leg muscles when doing it, and then I kind of learned the right way to do it. And what a difference. But I can already feel some of the soreness coming through, which is good, which means I, did something of value. I just need to make sure I keep my protein up now for sure. Oy. God damn. Man, I had like a little cat nap before stream. Maybe I didn't sleep enough the day before. I guess I kind of technically didn't, but still. Okay. Anything anybody wants to chat about? Sometimes a conversation helps wake me up. Or I can just go to sleep. At some point, I was thinking it would be kind of fun to, like, maybe in the back half of streams to play through some Disco Elysium. I've never played the game before. I've seen like the first hour or so, maybe 20 minutes of gameplay. I think Hassan played it once, and he was like, there was that weird little like British kid or whatever, and then some labor union thing starting off. And I was like, okay, got it. Like a little bit of that, but I was seeing patient. But it seemed cool, and it seemed all like voice acted and shit too, so it shouldn't be too bad to stream, at least for a slow reader like me. But I definitely like doing the React stuff and the chatting stuff. Like the other day, we had a stream where, like the first 2.5 hours or whatever, maybe even 3, it was just chatting, which was awesome. Ugh, damn. Okay, I think I have to go to sleep just because it's going to be low energy and not good. But let's see. What is something? Let me double check my schedule, as I always try to make sure I do before I go to sleep. Looks like Tuesday and Wednesday all look pretty open and good. Thursday I might do a thing through Zoom. Pretty open week here, but the weekend's going to be not so open. I can do a little workout thing in the morning when I wake up. What else we going to do? I should try to work on that fluoride script. Talking about doing video editing on my own making a name for myself more separately. Because like streaming is fun and I love doing it, but streaming to nobody is kind of a useless endeavor, right? Being a video editor for other people, totally fine. I don't mind doing that. I like video editing. It's good. The more I do it, the easier it gets to do. Workflow gets better, more efficient. Another thing I could do is become one of those like clip channels that watches streamers, leftist streamers that are like chill with their IP, and then I could just, make clips and pump out videos of those channels just to like get a channel up and monetized. But I'm sure that takes a while, but I have a few months left of my severance to really try to like push for it. It seems like bot channels are better at that, where they just automatically capture and edit and upload videos. And that's like kind of like that's where like autonomous, air quote, autonomous AI bullshit will kind of come into play and like make things sort of obsolete when it comes to like simple tasks. And that's would make that sort of like a fruitless effort to go through. But at the very least, like if I had central committee takes and sections that I made videos of and uploaded, or even Hassan section. I mean, Hassan seems like it's like such a oversaturated, but also that's where views are, right? So if you're first to market with certain titles, thumbnails, which you might get beat out by all the bots that exist, or the bigger Hasanabi and complex channels. So like, yes and no. But if I pump out videos of like other people's takes and analysis of things, then those, if they see a consistent amount of decent edits of their stuff, they could go, hey, do you want to be my editor and just do it for me instead? I could be like, sure, right? As a new way of doing my job for myself, if my solo career doesn't take off. But like also another way for the solo career to take off better is to produce content that other creators can then react to, and that'll help get the channel started up from nothing, and it also would technically help this potentially. Also, I should be trying to leverage more of the thing with the DSA, but I also wanted to make sure that I was providing content that would be useful and interesting to people before I start saying, yo guys, you should watch me. Also, me streaming from like 3 a.m., 1 a.m., and going deeper into the morning, like 11 a.m., whatever, I'm making it all the way through. That's a little bit better, but still. Not the best. Not the best. Yeah. So, a little bit of workout. And then either I maybe do a little mini edit of a creator, or I work on my script. So that's my goals for tomorrow. And then like chores and shit, like dishes or whatever. Hopefully you could find something for yourself. Some bullshit, simple little task, making a phone call, setting up an appointment. Something that just been on your list for a little while. Getting it done will give you some real... It's like a kick in the ass. Get you going. Anyway, thanks for coming. Bye-bye.